Thank you.
Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of the Council in the Council Chamber at Castle Hill, Winchester. Now, the first item of business this evening is the minutes of the previous meetings of the Council. Members, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 15th of January this year are set out on pages 9 to 13 of your agenda pack. Are these agreed as a correct record? Right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest to be made regarding the business before us this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect to most of the items on the agenda due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters.
Yes, I'd like to make the same declaration, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like?
I'd like to make the same declaration, please.
Councillor Becker?
I'd like to make a different declaration.
Right, okay.
I have an interest in respect of item 5 of the agenda, the same interest that I've declared previously when this paper has been discussed, so I will leave the room at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of agenda item 5, Housing Revenue Account Budget 2025 to 26, CAB 3490, due to me being a Winchester City Council housing tenant. However, because of the content of the report do not relate specifically to my tenancy, there is no material conflict of interest, and I have been granted a dispensation by the monitoring officer to enable me to participate and vote on these matters. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make the same declaration as Councillor Todd. Thank you.
I know I'm short, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to make the same declaration as Councillor Todd as a member of Hampshire County Council. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you. The next agenda item is announcements. Members, my mayoral year continues to be busy. On the 4th of March, I'm very much looking forward to meeting an intrepid team of fellow councillors at the annual Rotary Club pancake races in the Cathedral Outer Close. I'm also attending the High Sheriff's Community Awards on the 6th of March, and then on the 13th of March, I will be presenting my own community awards in the Guildhall. And in terms of my own charities, on the 2nd of March, there is a pie and mash luncheon at Abbey House. And on the 8th of March, there's a mayoral-themed guided walk finishing at Abbey House. And on the 20th of April, there's a charity car boot sale. And finally, on the 29th of April, there's a fundraising dinner at Rick Stein's. All my details of all these events are listed on Ticket Source, Mayor of Winchester's charity. Mr. Macebearer, thank you for accompanying me this evening. Right, Leader, do you have any announcements?
Indeed I do, Mr. Mayor. As many of you know, on Wednesday the 5th of February 2025, I received 2 letters from Jim McMahon, the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution. The first formally inviting me to work with other council leaders in the Hampshire Solent area on a plan for local government reorganisation. The second confirming that Hampshire, Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight have been accepted into the devolution priority programme, that county elections for 2025 have been delayed by a year, and that a consultation would be launched regarding the creation of a mayoral combined authority and the election of a mayor for Hampshire Solent in 2026, and that consultation is already underway. There's not much I can add on the subject of a mayoral combined authority. I would urge you all to respond to the consultation. Local government reorganisation will have much greater impact, at least to us as an organisation, and requires us to work at breakneck speed. And what are we being asked to do? In essence, to propose a plan to replace the two-tier system of local government in Hampshire with a single tier, a unitary tier, combining what the county does with what district councils do in one council, and much larger councils, around 500,000 people per council, compared to the 130,000 of Winchester City Council today. The formal deadline for the proposal is September the 26th, 2025, but we are asked to provide an interim plan on or before March the 21st, 2025, in about 3 weeks' time. And if those proposals that we submit in September are agreed, we will all be living in new unitary council areas in May 2028. It's a huge change and not much time to sort it out. We won't be submitting detailed plans in March, but I hope we will be setting a clear direction and highlighting the issues that need to be addressed. It won't be the final plan, we won't be proposing a new map, but we will be saying how we get to one. In order to develop the proposals, I've chaired 3 meetings with council leaders and chief executives and the consultants we have appointed to assist us since February the 5th, and will be chairing the one that finalises our draft submission next Wednesday. As you know, we've held members' briefings, parish briefings and business briefings, and we will be holding a public briefing next Monday evening. I've spoken to 2 of our MPs, and I'm looking to arrange a meeting with the 3rd early next week. We have scheduled a special cabinet and a special full council on the 19th and 20th of March to talk about the issues, so that all of you can have your say on the principles and priorities going forward. And I will be briefing you and discussing those issues informally in advance of that as well. And there isn't that long to go. In common with most other councils, we will be publishing our submission because we're publishing the papers for those meetings in just over a week on March the 10th. The biggest issue with the local government reorganisation remains, as I've highlighted before, the financial pressures on most upper tier councils are extreme. Hampshire alone is projected to have a £218 million deficit every year ongoing, and there is no point in creating new unitary councils that immediately go bust. However, as requested by the government, the leaders of Hampshire's councils, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight's councils, will make those issues clear to them. Reorganisation risks being complex, expensive and disruptive, and difficult for the officers who have worked so hard for the public and for this council for many years. And Winchester is a place that for over 800 years has believed that local decisions should be taken locally, and we stand alongside our predecessors in believing that still to be true today. But rather than getting stuck in the details of organisation, we mustn't forget what's most important, that local people's voices are heard, good local services are provided, and our city and district will continue to thrive. That the challenge of reorganisation doesn't stand in the way of tackling the challenges of climate change, the nature emergency, the cost of living crisis, homelessness, social care, special educational needs, and ensuring that our city and district continues to be such a great place to be. We will be centring on that going forward, because that's what local government does, what we've done on and off for over 800 years, and what we will fight to ensure that we continue to do into the future for many years to come.
Thank you, Leader. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, members. I have apologies for this evening's meetings from Councillors Batho, Chamberlain, Cunningham, Greenburr, Murphy, Small, Miller and Reach. And Mr Mayor, Councillor Brooke has advised she's been unavoidably delayed, but she will attend the meeting as soon as possible this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. The next agenda item is item 4, questions from the members of the public. I would like to welcome again members of the public who are here this evening and who have submitted questions for the Council to answer. I understand that we've received 3 questions for this evening's meeting, and a reminder to please read out the questions as set out in the order paper, which has been published on the Council's website. Now, could I first call on Alex Harmon, and if you could address the meeting using the microphone, and a reminder that following the response given by the Cabinet member, you may also ask a supplementary question which must arise directly out of the original question or the reply.
Good evening. This year will be the first year that we will exceed the 1.5 degrees global temperature increase, a limit set by the Paris Agreement. This is not a political target. This is a physical limit of the planet. Given that our food system is a leading driver of the climate crisis and recognising the urgent need for action to stabilise our climate, will Winchester City Council endorse the plant-based treaty? Furthermore, acknowledging the importance of transparency and education, will the Council commit to actively communicating with the public about the environmental and health consequences of animal agriculture, empowering residents, including children and future generations, to make informed choices? Finally, to demonstrate a true commitment to reducing carbon emissions, will the Council integrate principles of the plant-based treaty into its existing carbon neutrality action plan, specifically exploring local implementations that prioritise increasing access to plant-based foods and raising awareness about the devastating impact of animal agriculture, thereby supporting a just transition to a more sustainable food system? Thank you.
Could I call on Councillor Lerney, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much indeed for your question, and thank you very much for raising the issue of the plant-based treaty. It's an interesting and thought-provoking document, and I'm pleased to confirm to you that the Council has a range of policies and plans in place that support the 3 main principles of the treaty: relinquish, redirect and restore. Specifically, relinquish: no land use change, ecosystem degradation or deforestation for animal agriculture. Redirect: an active transition away from animal-based food systems to plant-based systems. And restore: actively restoring key ecosystems, particularly restoring forests and rewilding landscapes. In March 2023, the City Council signed up to the Winchester Food Partnership's Good Food Charter, a local initiative which supports the principles of the plant-based treaty. Quoting the Good Food Charter's preamble, food systems create 40% of greenhouse gas emissions, and biodiversity in the UK has fallen by 70% since 1970. Our actions can help to combat the climate and nature emergency. Good food is vital to the quality of all our lives. As well as being tasty, healthy and affordable, the food we eat should be good for nature, good for workers, good for local businesses, and good for animal welfare. Our vision is to create a healthy and sustainable food culture for people living and working in the Winchester district, regardless of income. As part of signing the Charter, the Council pledged that when it offers catering at events and meetings it organises, it will be on a vegetarian by default basis, and confirmed its commitment to sourcing seasonal, local and ethically produced food wherever possible. Other policies supporting principles of the treaty include the Declaration of Nature Emergency, our new local plan and biodiversity net gain technical advice note, and sustainable procurement policy. While we support the broad principles, the full version of the treaty also consists of 40 detailed proposals, and these we are not currently able to commit to. These would require a good deal of thought, work and consideration of the wider implications, including budgetary implications, before a commitment to sign could be made. The Council's Carbon Neutrality Action Plan prioritises the actions, including nature-based solutions, which this Council can take to move towards carbon neutrality by 2030. As due to local government reorganisation, this authority is unlikely to exist for more than a few more years. We are already having to further prioritise the actions within the existing plan rather than add to them. However, where opportunities arise, we will continue to promote the benefits of reducing the consumption of meat for both health and environmental reasons.
Do you have a supplementary question, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for your response. The supplementary question is just, would you or any other councillors be willing to follow up this discussion either in person or over a video call, just to see if we can help out as volunteers and with the Plant-Based Treaty team with any local implementations?
Councillor Lerney?
Yes, very happy to do that.
Right. We now have, if I could call on Dr. Catherine Phipps, if you could please ask your question.
Good evening. Winchester City Council has declared a climate emergency and have also identified animal agriculture as a driver of carbon emissions. Given that even if all fossil fuel production ceased today, food system emissions alone would still push us beyond the 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees Celsius Paris Agreement targets. And considering that food accounts for a third of all greenhouse gas emissions, with meat and dairy consumption being the largest contributors, and a recent analysis showing UK food emissions could be cut by 75% with plant-based diets, doesn't it make sense for Winchester City Council to prioritise addressing this crucial aspect of the climate crisis? The IPCC has stressed the urgent need to transform our food system from an emission source to a carbon sink. Cities and councils are vital in driving climate solutions, and local actions can have a significant national impact. Following the lead of cities like Amsterdam and Edinburgh, who have endorsed the Plant-Based Treaty and implemented impactful changes like increasing plant-based options in public institutions and schools, including dedicated Earth Days with 100% plant-based menus, will Winchester City Council endorse the Plant-Based Treaty, joining a growing global movement for positive environmental change and demonstrating our commitment to a sustainable future?
Councillor Lerney, please.
Thank you very much for your question. I refer to my previous answer on our existing policies and signing the Plant-Based Treaty, but I'm happy to take a supplementary question.
Yeah, my only supplementary question is the same as Alex's, so thank you for your response before.
Thank you. Could I call on Phoebe Nunn, please, to ask your question?
Good evening. Recognising the significant health implications associated with diets high in processed meats, classified as carcinogenic by the World Health Organization, and considering the Plant-Based Treaty's call for honest food labelling, including cancer warning labels on processed meats, what steps will the Council take to promote transparency in food labelling within our community? Beyond simply informing consumers, how can the Council leverage this information to support a shift towards healthier plant-based diets, aligning with the Treaty's emphasis on public health and preventative care? Will the Council endorse the Plant-Based Treaty as a commitment to prioritising the well-being of our residents alongside environmental sustainability? Thank you.
Councillor Lerney, if you could respond, please.
Thank you. In line with national guidelines, we would recommend that all our residents follow a healthy, balanced diet with minimal consumption of highly processed food. Processed meat in particular is a recognised carcinogen, increasing the risk of bowel and other cancers. The City Council does not, however, have any responsibility for or powers over food labelling, and the experience of public health campaigns generally is that trying to frighten people into positive behaviour only works at the margins. Making better choices more attractive and easily available is a better way to drive behaviour change. I refer to my previous answer on our existing policies and endorsing the plant-based treaty, but I'm happy to take a supplementary question.
Do you have a supplementary question, please?
Thank you. My supplementary question would be the same as my previous question, so thank you for your response.
Thank you. If you would like to continue following the meeting, you can go up to the public space, if that would suit you. Thank you very much. Right, members, the next item of business this evening is agenda item 5, consideration and determination of the recommended minute of Cabinet held on the 12th of February regarding the HRA budget for 2025 to 26. Mr. John, could you please introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 5 is the recommended minute of Cabinet held 12th of February 25 regarding the Housing Revenue Account Budget 2025 to 26. And this is set out on your agenda and in the draft minute of Cabinet on pages 15 to 18. Report CAB 3490 refers, and this is also included in your agenda pack on pages 19 to 53. Mr. Mayor, please note that at meeting of Cabinet, an updated annotated version of the table at paragraph 11.42 of the report on page 36 was also circulated, and this has been included as an addendum to report CAB 3490 and is on page 55 of your agenda pack. To conclude, in summary, the recommended minute of Cabinet is for Council to agree the 2025-26 Housing Revenue Account budget, including the specifics as set out in recommendations 1 to 14 in the recommended minute and the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. Please, can I have a proposer for the recommended minute of the Cabinet?
I will propose that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Lerney, right.
Mr. Mayor, I will second the motion, but would like to reserve my right to speak.
Right, very good. Right, Councillor Westwood, if you would like to introduce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Despite the continuing budget challenges of increased costs now baked in following a period of high inflation, interest rates that are higher than experienced over many decades, and energy costs that remain significantly higher than historic levels, this report proposes a housing revenue account budget for 2025-26 to achieve the Council's policy objectives to go greener faster, address the cost of living crisis, and maintain commitment to deliver 1,000 additional council homes. The housing revenue account is operated as a ring-fenced landlord account for the provision of social housing to our tenants. It must self-finance, and to ensure financial sustainability, the rents and service charges must be sufficient to fund the expenditure incurred to own, operate, and continually invest in the properties. We're very proud to have over 5,000 council homes in the Winchester district, but we also have around 1,600 people on the Hampshire Home Choice waiting list. The changed new homes strategy agreed in last year's budget to move towards buying as well as building is paying dividends, and we can already see the route to deliver over 600 of these 1,000 additional homes. The HRA Capital Programme includes provision for existing and emerging opportunities sufficient to finance the achievement of the Council's target to deliver 1,000 additional council homes by 2032. As well as new homes, we need to modernise our existing homes. We are improving the quality of our existing homes, and the retrofit programme has already delivered benefits to over 500 council homes in our district. Funding to go greener faster has been maintained in this budget to improve the energy efficiency and to promote decarbonisation of our council homes. The budget retains significant investment in retrofitting the stock, with proposals to combine fabric upgrades with renewable energy technologies such as solar PV and battery storage that are vital to meeting our target of EPC C in some of our most energy inefficient homes. The budget also makes provision for the continuation of our major repairs programme to deliver refurbishment of our existing housing stock to maintain decent homes standard. This includes important items such as roof replacement, upgraded doors, windows and kitchens. This investment alongside our retrofit programme is delivering council homes that are warmer, more comfortable and cheaper to run. As well as providing new homes and maintaining our existing homes, housing is also a service, and our tenants want a modern, efficient service that's easy to use. Our tenants want the housing service to provide excellent customer service and be easy to deal with when they need support. The budget includes funding to modernise the customer service offer through development of a digital-first customer journey, improving communications and self-service options for tenants, and improving efficiency of services. We will, of course, still maintain capability that allows those who do not choose to use a digital platform to use the housing service. The work will also include the reprocurement of the repairs and maintenance contract, which is due for renewal in 2026. To pay for the housing service, we need to ensure that we make the best use of our assets. We're moving to full cost recovery for housing service charges and water treatment service charges over a period so that these services are not subsidised by other council tenants. For housing service charges, we propose to cap increases at 5% or £5 per week, which is the greater, and to phase towards full cost recovery over a period of years. The move to full cost recovery for water treatment is more complex, and the budget contains provision to invest in a number of water treatment plants to reduce operational costs, and also to fully consult through the first half of the next financial year, and then move to full cost recovery for these services for all water treatment service users over a transitional period. Finally, I turn to rents. Increasing the rent for our social housing and affordable housing is always a difficult decision. The council sets its rents in line with the rent standard and the regulator of social housing's rent setting guidelines. The basis of rent setting is the September CPI plus 1%, which for this budget period is proposed at a 2.7% rent increase for all tenants. In line with previous years, the budget setting processes and options for achieving a balanced budget were discussed with TACT, and the TACT board agreed the proposed rent increases at their board meeting on the 27th of January. Despite the challenging circumstances we face, I believe this is a strong plan that addresses those circumstances whilst also improving and modernising the services and housing that we make available to the current and future tenants who rely on them. Thank you.
Are there any questions, please? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend the administration for another challenging but important budget for the housing revenue account. It is an important element of our services, which we have all jointly supported over the years. However, I remain most concerned by the priorities being given to the retrofit programme. As an example, the properties in my ward, in Micheldever, which are currently being retrofitted at huge expense, £150,000 per unit, will never return the value of that investment in saved energy and the benefits from we need to achieve for a climate emergency. Shouldn't we be spending the money on more effective ways of addressing this priority crisis that we face, rather than picking out the most difficult properties?
Councillor Westwood, please.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. That's an interesting question, thank you, and one that we have discussed and pondered internally as well over the last 2 years since I've been involved with the housing business and our retrofitting priorities. It's not just the properties that you're talking about in your ward. These will be the Swedish cottages that we're all familiar with. There's many homes that we have across our portfolio that are in a similar position. And we're faced with the challenge of upgrading and bringing these homes up to a standard that meets the government requirement, which is currently set at EPCC, by 2030. That's where we need to be with all of our stock. And these houses are no exception. So we have a choice. We can upgrade these houses so that they meet those standards, and the tenants that have been in those homes, and you know the tenants in your ward have been in those homes for many years, can continue to live in their community, in those homes, with their family, with their friends, in homes that meet that level of standard that the government have set. Or we could choose to divest ourselves of those homes and redevelop those sites. I mean, those sites are beautiful. They're very large plots. We could put significant numbers of new homes on those plots. The decision that we have taken is to prioritise the people, their lives, their community, and we have decided that the right route forward is for us to take what is going to be something like 200 properties across our housing stock. And they're not all at that price that you quoted, by the way. But we will look at all of those properties, and we will look to upgrade those to meet the government requirement of EPCC by 2030. I had talked about the introduction of more modern technology, or modern technology, into the retrofit programme. That is a key aspect of that programme as well. To get to EPCC on something like a Swedish cottage or an early house, we would almost have to destroy the house in order to put the right level of insulation in those houses to do that. We are moving forwards on the basis of a cost-effective approach of fabric and technology, introducing solar panels, battery power, etc., into those homes to get to that stage, so that we can keep those communities together, bring those houses up to the standard they need to be, and people can live in those houses going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Horrell, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me to ask a question. And I thank the portfolio holder for the opportunity to examine the HRA budget over several committees in recent weeks. So we've had a chance to understand the budget and future plans. So there are limited questions, I think, this evening that are still outstanding. However, one, Mr. Mayor, is have we heard about the Local Authority Housing Fund grant, which we hope to use to refurbish Barnes House and buy some other properties, allowing us to significantly increase our access to temporary accommodation? I would welcome the opportunity to know where we are, which is relates to item 10 in the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Westwood, please.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell, and thank you for asking that question on Barnes House. Barnes House has been a discussion point for a long time now, and it was in last year's paper as well as a potential house for and property for divestment. We have a homes and homeless crisis ongoing in this country, and the level of homelessness that we're seeing and people who are at risk of homelessness coming into our teams wanting support is rising on a monthly basis. And I think the level is something like 21% up on last year in terms of the approaches that we've had. The decision to divest in Barnes House can't be taken lightly, because that is a potential temporary accommodation property that we could have within our portfolio. To answer your question specifically, the LAF funding that we applied for 12 homes plus the refurbishment of Barnes House. The government have come back and have allocated us a grant for 4 homes and not the funding for Barnes House. We've looked at the funding that we will get from the 4 homes. We have gone back and asked the government a supplementary question as to whether we could use part of that funding to upgrade Barnes House, to bring that in use as temporary accommodation, and we feel that that would be better use of that money rather than going out and purchasing an ex-HMO or wherever and converting that. So we've asked the government explicitly, can we use the money to bring Barnes House back into use as temporary accommodation? We are awaiting the reply from government on that. If they come back and agree that we can use that money, then we will move forwards and we will refurbish Barnes House and it will be brought back into use as temporary accommodation. If they deny us that opportunity, then we will look to divest Barnes House from the portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And also like to thank the portfolio holder and officers for the well-constructed HRA budget. As I've said to Councillor Westwood before, this is a commendable game of three-dimensional chess, which I think the officers have to contend with, so well done. I have one quick question. It's a general question, and I have raised this before, and this refers to the rural affordable housing elements of the HRA. My understanding is that DEFRA has provided a £2.5 million for a new renewable housing enablers network. So the question is, I guess we need to take it offline, but I hope you'll be able to give me some response. Will we be looking at leveraging this funding to support rural parishes? I hope this can be addressed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, for your question. I am not familiar with that funding, to be frank, and I'm very happy to have the discussion offline. What I will say is that I was at the AGM of Action Hampshire this afternoon, along with Mr. Mayor as well, and one of the presentations they gave this afternoon was about the importance of rural housing in terms of keeping communities together, rural housing for the health and welfare of the people in those communities. And there was discussion through why it is so important that we invest in those rural areas and do build the homes in those areas. And there was presentation following that from a developer who specialises in doing that. I was there, Mrs. Egan, who looks after the New Homes team and is working for the in that area for me in terms of the rural exception sites work, was at that meeting as well. So I can assure you that from the conversations that I had this afternoon, I am as eager as anybody else in this room to take forward rural exception sites, to identify them and work to build out new homes in rural communities, and I can assure you we'll take every opportunity to use somebody else's money to do that. Thank you.
Right, do we have any more questions?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just one final question from me on the detail. Have we developed plans to significantly improve our tenant involvement levels, which were limited to less than 0.5% when we consulted about the HRA spending priorities this year? Also, the new consumer standards groups, which should be one of the key vehicles for tenant involvement, have yet to be well supported by them. Can I ask the portfolio holder how he intends to change this position as tenant engagement is a key measure for the social housing regulator. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Westwood.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Horrell. So the 0.5% you refer to is the response rate that we received from a survey that we sent out asking for people's comments on the areas where we should prioritise savings within our budget going forwards. What I would like to say there is that this is the first time this survey has been done, ever, and that we've asked a broad set of people. It's usually been constrained to a much narrower set of people. And I'm delighted that we sent the email out with the survey request to over 4,000 tenants. And 58% of those tenants actually opened that email, and from there, a further 8% clicked through onto the survey. So I'm delighted that 58% of 4,000 people actually looked at what we were going to do, which I think is a step forward. And I'm delighted that 8% of those felt it was worthwhile to move to the survey. Where it all fell over in a pack of cards, really, is that we only got the 0.5%, as you say, actually completing the survey. And, you know, the learning for us is that don't ask 17 questions when 4 will do. And so I take on board your comments on that, and we need to change that. But I'm pleased that we've gone further than we've ever gone before in trying to reach out to people. I'm pleased that, you know, well over 2,000 of our tenants actually saw what we were going to do before we did it, which is a complete change of game. And I can assure you that when we do this in future, then we will have a response rate that's more acceptable from any survey that we sent out. In terms of the consumer standard groups, then I am keen to get away from the measure of success that the measure of success for our consumer standards and our engagement with our residents is measured by how many tenants turn up to a quarterly meeting on a wet Wednesday evening in the middle of the city here, which is, to be for the best will in the world, is not going to be a very large number. The legislation requires us to listen to our tenants. We listen in so many different ways. We engage with residents daily through our property services team, through our retrofit team, through strategic housing, neighbourhood services, estates improvement, community safety, sheltered housing, tenancy sustainment. All these teams are talking to people on a regular basis. Within our sheltered accommodation, our sheltered offices are in every single one of those blocks every week. And so the other ways we engage, we have newsletters, we run surveys, we use My Winchester Tenancy. So I think the engagement needs to be seen as a broad brush of activities, not turn up to a meeting to discuss a subject which they've probably got no interest in on a Wednesday evening and call that the consumer standard group meeting and tick that off as a bit of a success because we got half a dozen people there who were different to the half a dozen people to the previous meeting. That's not where I want to be. For me, success here is continual engagement with people and being able to take their views and feed them back into what we're doing as a service. That is work in progress. We know what we've got to do. We are getting there. And I know the team, I've made my views very clear to the director and the CHOS that I want significant improvement in that space. The team are a week and a half into a 6-week piece of work to achieve what I want to achieve, which is that engagement on a more continuous basis over a much broader range of tenants over all of our geographies. And so I can assure you that that's high on my agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. Are there any more questions? Right, that being the case, can we go on to debate, please? Councillor Bolton, please, and then Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I realise, Councillor Westwood, that your area of responsibility is a real exercise in making the least worst decision on many things. It must be pretty damn tricky. What I am concerned about, though, is that the right level of value for money, which is an important test that we have to apply to our decision making, is correctly being applied. In that, in a previous life, I was a biologist, so I get net zero, and I'm a big fan of trying to solve those problems. But I'm concerned that an element of zealotry to get to net zero is overriding sensible decision making when it comes to retrofitting, because with the best will in the world, £150,000 to retrofit one of those cottages is just bonkers. And I find it, really difficult to justify that as a sensible decision on any scale. Please, anybody else? Can you explain to me how that makes sense? But we need to revisit those decisions, because I just don't think that that is value for money. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start by thanking the Cabinet Member, and indeed the Cabinet Member for Finance as well, for their positive engagement with members from across the Chamber. I'm sure that having this early engagement has benefited all by enabling the opportunity for cross-party contributions. Specifically on the finances, there have obviously been lots of committee meetings before this evening to review and question elements of the finances, plus, of course, meetings with the tenants group. So on the HRA, I just want to comment on one element. Whilst progress is being made on improving the energy efficiency of the council properties, and I know there are questions to be asked around making sure that that's spent in the right way, I think that the Cabinet Member would agree with me that the opportunity remains to go greener faster. Whilst spending on housing energy efficiency improvements is double what it was last year, it's still almost £2 million underspent against the September budget, meaning that more tenants than we would like are being left in cold homes. So this is an issue that we need to push even harder on next year. Thank you.
Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the HRA budget for this financial year. It confirms again what our housing team undertakes for our tenants in the district. Our homes are well built. We are classed as a caring landlord. It allows our tenants to live in communities, have social networks, know their neighbours and get to know friends, address loneliness and so forth like that across our district and in our estates in the town, and have a sense of belonging. This is what you don't really see on a budget sort of spreadsheet, but that's the reality of what we're endorsing tonight by moving forward. This HRA is allowing our tenants to live and thrive in their communities, in their homes, and become the citizens that they are and can be. And young people who are desperately wanting to get on the housing ladder or on the housing ladder and then start becoming a young family, to the elderly tenants who downsize and become into like a sheltered home complex. All those complexities that we have to deal with, our housing officers deal with on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and stuff like that. And the demands on the housing team, we know sometimes is quite demanding, especially from the homelessness point of view and all that sort of stuff. So I want to endorse again the HRA budget moving forward and actually give thanks to the housing team. We sometimes as councillors get to know the sort of the downsides on repairs not quite work, but we actually never know sometimes all the positive stories about what's out there, and when our contractors do good repairs and stuff like that. We only ever sometimes hear the bad news, and I'm reassured that we have a good service to our tenants in that respect. our estate improvement officers are out there trying to make life much more endearing to our tenants, and hear different ideas from members bringing forward on their communities to enhance their lives through the estate improvements. And the retrofit programme, as much as it's scary, it's a reality. We need to move forward into that. And the last thought I'd say, Mr. Mayor, if you allow me, in 1974, my family was displaced up to the valley in Stanmore, and lots of families, not just us as potentially our family, but families in streets and streets were spending 6 months in there because it was what's called the modernisation, when they took the coal fires out and then they gave us the radiators and so forth like that. It was actually very nice to go back into a home with radiators in all our houses. But in 1974, I, as a young person, I was in my last year at Stanmore Primary School, experienced the modernisation of our council home. The sad thing I'd say, though, is they took the coal-fired mantelpiece out. They could have really left that in, because they put such an ugly gas fire in. But there we go. That's just a passing comment of how ugly sometimes the gas fires were in the 70s. But that was said. That was an impact that we had as a family to move out of our home for 6 months. Now, we're not telling our families and our tenants to move out of our homes, but we are actually trying to align themselves actually with the right move with the climate emergency we're facing, to actually say there's a way we need as landlords and as a council to take this matter seriously. And it will have an impact in you. It will be a little bit of pain, but it will be a gain. And not so much as that we're moving them in the valley for 6 months in the chalets, because the chalets are no longer there, because where the chalets were is bill form now. So we haven't got room to put chalets up there anymore. But we were there once as a council doing that sort of stuff. So this is not new to us. It's just a sense of us having to face what we do face as you know, the world is facing this climate emergency, and we as a council are moving in the best way for our tenants in that respect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Horrell, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you once again. May I take this opportunity to say well done and thank you to the housing officer team for all that they have done on behalf of our tenants throughout the last year. The HRA is a crucial part of Winchester City Council's work. Thousands of residents rely on us to provide decent homes and wonderful communities across the district. In fact, we're responsible for about 10% of the homes in our district, so not an insignificant responsibility. The production of the HRA budget is not an inconsequential piece of work, and it is essential that we continue to ensure that the budget is sound and we provide homes and communities to the highest possible standards, which is why I will be supporting the budget recommendations tonight. We now have an added responsibility to meet the requirements of the social housing regulator, and so additional efforts are needed to meet their standards. We have had the opportunity to scrutinise the HRA budget across several committees, as I mentioned earlier, for which I do thank the portfolio holder. This has allowed us all to have a better understanding and hopefully able for all of us to support the recommendations. The work is extensive for the housing team in the next year, and I trust all councillors will provide support to the officers in their efforts. They have a lot on their plate. The Winchester district often gives the impression that everything is wonderful, particularly when we win awards such as the best place to live. However, it is incumbent upon us as councillors to ensure that those who are not in such a privileged position to buy their own homes are able to access council properties and the wonderful communities which we have established. As we move forward in the new world of devolution and local government reorganisation, we should ensure that the HRA continues to be a jewel in our crown and that we do not diminish any efforts on behalf of our tenants. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Porter, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All residents in all homes should have the opportunity to live in homes that cost less to run and are more affordable in which to live. And the conversation here tonight has actually also centred on homes, and the fact is the decision is actually centering on the families that live there. In earlier questions, the subject of rural homes came up, more rural homes wanted. And the homes we were talking about earlier, the Swedish homes, I see them in Alresford and in Old Alresford as well as Micheldever. They're really good-sized family homes. If we actually decided to bring them down and or sell them, it would cost us far more than £150,000 to actually rehouse those families. Absolutely, definitely much more than 150,000. You could say we could sell them, but it doesn't actually help the community, as Councillor Scott said. It's the community that's really important. So where else would those homes go in those villages if we sold those and wanted to put more? It's just not reasonable. So it is our responsibility to improve those homes to EPCC, and better earlier than later, because at least those people get the benefit of the lower costs while they're living there. Thank you.
Councillor Rutter, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, my comments were, first of all, I do also want to congratulate the whole housing team. I think that's been an excellent year, and I think this is an excellent budget, so well done, Chris. And what we're looking at for the retrofit scheme is cost effectiveness versus humanity. Cost effectiveness versus the cost of rebuilding, as Councillor Porter said, and versus the cost of rehousing. The retrofit is not a loony climate change from zealots, but actually we're just reaching the minimal government targets. We're living in a world where it costs £3 million for a set of traffic lights, or £200 million to streamline a motorway junction. So £150,000 is not so much to keep a community together and give them a modern, warm home that they can afford to heat. So I'm delighted to support this recommended minute. Thank you.
Councillor Clear, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This will be very short and sweet. Yes, we have scrutinised over several committees this budget. I think it's a good HRA budget, and I thank Councillor Westwood and the housing team for a job very well done, and I would definitely be supporting it. Thank you.
Right, any more contributions to the debate, please? Right, that being the case, perhaps you would like to speak, Councillor Laird.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This council is rightly proud of what is now a century-long commitment to providing good quality, affordable housing for the residents of the district. Just this week, I attended the City of Winchester Trust Architecture Awards, where not only did the Valley development in Stanmore receive an award, but the lead judge, who lives in London, commented on how wonderful it was to see good design of both buildings and open spaces from many eras across a housing estate. As others have pointed out, though, what we do isn't about buildings, it is about people. Providing warm, healthy homes in well-maintained surroundings that residents can afford is central to creating happy people and communities. This has become harder, and this budget does set out some of the savings needed as a result of fast increasing costs for materials and staff over recent years. Despite this pressure on budgets, we have maintained our commitment to decarbonising our homes, but doing so in a way which puts the people who live in them first, cutting bills and making homes easier to keep warm. As fellow councillors have pointed out, this can be expensive in individual instances, but that doesn't mean it is the wrong thing to do. The Swedish cottages were a pilot programme for where a full retrofit to meet government EPC requirements was needed, and we have learnt a lot from the process. booting long-standing tenants out of their homes and communities to either knock those homes down entirely or sell inefficient homes into the private sector for private tenants to freeze in is not something we should do lightly. The New Homes programme continues to add modern homes to our housing stock, and we are returning right to buy properties from student lets back to publicly owned family homes. This is a well thought out, well put together budget, and I would like to thank members from across the chamber for their support, not just in this particular meeting, but over many years, and thank officers for their hard work in bringing all this together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Westwood, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank, first of all, everybody for their questions and contributions to the debate on this paper this evening, because it's so important to the lives of so many people in our district. I would like to follow up the thanks that have been given by all sides of this House to the officers and the work that has been done by Mr. Hendy and his team throughout the last year to run that housing service through some difficult times, and I think you've done an excellent job in that respect. Should you be minded to support the budget paper tonight, then I do have a little to-do list for Mr. Hendy and the team. We will continue to deliver on our commitment to provide 1,000 additional council homes by 2032. And as well as the new homes, we'll continue to modernise our existing homes with the retrofit programme and to deliver warmer, more comfortable homes that are cheaper to run. We will improve the level of service that's provided by the housing team. Our tenants want a service that's easy to use and is there when they need it. This budget secures the modernisation of the house, or supports the modernisation of the housing service. We need to bring it into the digital age, but we still need to respect those that do not want to use that method of communication. We're all aware of the range of ages and so on that we have of our tenants, so we need to cater for many different demands. Also, and we've not really spoken about this tonight, this country has a home and a homelessness crisis, and we need to continue the often overlooked but great work done by the housing team to prevent homelessness in this district and to support those who do sadly find themselves homeless. I cannot overstate the work of that team. It's fantastic. And finally, we need to continue building a closer relationship with our tenants to hear their views and to deliver the services that they want at a time when they want them in a way that meets their needs. So I do hope you can support the budget paper before you this evening and allow us to deliver the housing service that our current and future tenants want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. Right, is the recommended minute of the Cabinet as set out in the agenda and in the recommended minute agreed? Can I see a show of hands, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that vote is carried. Are there any votes against? Any abstentions? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you. The recommended minute of the Cabinet is agreed. The next item of business this evening is agenda item 6, consideration and determination of the recommended minute of the Cabinet held on the 12th of February 2025 regarding the General Fund budget for 2025 to 26. Mr. John, could you please introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 6 is the recommended minute of Cabinet held on the 12th of Feb 2025 regarding the General Fund budget 2025 to 26. And this is set out on your agenda and in the draft minute of Cabinet on pages 57 to 59 of your agenda pack. Report CAB 3494 refers, and this is also included on pages 61 to 96. Please note that an updated version of Appendix C to report CAB 3494, which is a table setting out the general fund earmarked reserves, was circulated to the meeting of Cabinet with a supplementary agenda. This updated version of the appendix is included in your agenda pack and can be found on page 89. To conclude, Council are recommended to agree the level of general fund budget for 2025-26, including the specifics as set out in recommendations 1 to 12, in the recommended minute and the report. Members, please note that following consideration of the general fund budget for 2025-26, Council is then required to consider the council tax resolution for 2025-26, which is on pages 97 to 103 of your agenda pack. Members are also reminded that a recorded vote is required by law on motions, amendments, or substantive motions related to approval of the general fund budget and also for setting of council tax. Finally, can I please also advise that with regards to the general fund budget 2025-26, we will firstly take recommendations 1 to 8, and following those, recommendations 9 to 12. Consideration of the council tax setting will also then be a separate resolution of council. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. John. Can we please have a proposer for the recommended minute of the Cabinet? Councillor Cutler, thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Todd, thank you. Councillor Cutler, would you like to introduce, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with great pleasure that I introduce the General Fund budget for 25-26, as recommended to Council by Cabinet on the 12th of February. In November, Cabinet approved the medium-term financial strategy and budget options paper. The medium-term financial strategy showed a balanced budget for the years 25-26 and 26-27, and was forecasting increasing deficits from 27-28 onwards. This was produced based on estimates of the likely revenue funding from central government, which had not been confirmed at the time. Confirmation of the government funding came just before Christmas, and like previous years, is a one-year settlement, with the promise of a longer-term settlement in future years. However, this year the settlement was not simply a rollover from previous years, and there were some major changes, such as the abolition of the Rural Services Delivery Grant and the Services Grant, along with a significant cut in the funding floor grant. In total, the settlement led to a reduction of 230,000 on the estimate in the autumn. On top of this, the government has failed to deliver on its promise to protect the public sector from the increase in employers' national insurance contributions. Compensation will be at around £180,000 of a combined cost to the general fund and housing revenue account of 500,000. So we will only be achieving less than a 40% compensation for that. So that's the bad news. Around about 550,000 reduction on where we thought we were in the autumn. The good news is that we finally had confirmation that we will receive 834,000 from the extended producer responsibility levy, which is imposed on the packaging companies to help pay for recycling. This, along with a slightly improved forecast surplus in the current year, and further savings of 432,000 achieved from our TC25 programme, means that the updated medium-term financial strategy shown in Appendix A shows a smaller deficit in 27-28, although of course these potential future deficits will continue to be addressed by our transformation programme. The November paper proposed a number of options to be considered for the 25-26 budget. These have been taken forward into the budget and include increasing the annual budget for temporary accommodation to 300,000 and also creating a homelessness prevention pressures reserve of £1 million, transferred from the exceptional inflation reserve. A budget of 460,000 for the year for the early phase start of weekly food waste collection, along with future additional costs of 135,000. We were able to reduce the budget provision of 400,000 towards the Sport and Leisure Park and Meadowside Leisure Centre's additional utility costs, to reduce this to £100,000 due to falling energy prices and better energy management. However, we do need to reduce the expected income from planning fees by 200,000 due to reduced demands, and we've had to make additional provision of £50,000 for increased contract costs. Reserves play a critical role in the Council's financial stability, and this year we have undertaken a review of the reserve levels. Our two significant risk reserves are the Exceptional Inflation Reserve and the Transition Reserve. The risk of exceptional levels of inflation seems to have reduced from the high levels experienced in 2022, so we have reduced the level to £1 million by transferring £1 million to the newly created Homelessness Prevention Reserve and £902,000 to the Car Parks Reserve. The Transition Reserve was created to fund the transformation required to reduce future deficits. We have assessed the appropriate level for this reserve and will transfer £2 million to bolster the Property Asset Management Reserve and a further £200,000 to the Thriving Places Reserve, specifically to increase support for the planning enforcement team to deal with legacy enforcement cases. Members, this council has always been proud of our generous council tax reduction scheme, introduced by Councillor Godfrey many years ago, and updated by this administration with the introduction of universal credit. In this budget, we propose to uprate the income bands for claimants in line with the increase in universal credit at the beginning of the financial year to ensure that no claimant is disadvantaged by the increase. Additionally, we propose to increase the number of allowances that are disregarded from the calculation of entitlement. These are detailed at point 18.5 in the report. Last year, we took the decision to reduce the time a property could be empty before it was liable for 100% council tax surcharge from 2 years to 1 year. This year, we plan to give notice that from April 2026, the council will charge a 100% premium on second homes in the district. Members, this budget continues our careful stewardship of the council's finances, enabling us to deliver the themes set out in the council plan, whilst maintaining resilience in the face of a rapidly changing world. And we're able to limit the district council tax increase to a below inflation 2.7%. I'm sure you will wholeheartedly support the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if the can't find my mouse. If a portfolio holder could advise me when we might know when the remainder of the benefits to be achieved by TC25, £1.7 million per annum, which are due to be delivered during this coming financial year, when we will be hear an announcement of what those savings will be. When will we know this? Thank you.
Councillor Cutler, please.
As Councillor Godfrey will be aware, that the later stages of TC25 were planned to be the major digital transformation aspects of the scheme, and local government reorganisation means that we have to really reconsider our position on this, because large capital expenditure at this stage on systems that may not be used or may only have a short time to exist would not be wise. So we will be reassessing the approach to the transformation project in this year. We will continue to push for the savings that we've already found 1.4 million, and the changes in processes that don't require a huge amount of capital expenditure, but we certainly will have to reconsider the digital transformation program this coming year. So I can't give you an absolute timescale for when we will be able to achieve these savings.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I offer the portfolio holder my support for the approval of a second home premium for council tax from April 26. However, can I ask why the council is not entering into the National Empty Homes Week commencing next Monday in an effort to improve the position with empty homes in the district? We have 1,043 empty homes as at the council meeting in November, of which I understand 116, as we measured at that time, have been vacant for more than 2 years. If we as a council could bring just a percentage of these back into use, that would really help us in our provision of available homes in the district. We have powers given to us as a local authority. But if we do not try and use the powers we can exercise, we will never change the position. So can I therefore ask the portfolio holder to explain why he thinks this is simply not worth the effort at this time? Thank you.
Councillor Horrell is actually talking about an area that is not directly my responsibility. We have made the changes in terms of the empty homes on council tax, which is the area that I'm responsible for. I have had some discussions with Mr. Hendy about this, and the use of the empty homes orders is an astonishingly expensive approach and very, very resource intensive. So the likelihood of achieving the number of homes that we could probably achieve in other ways using the same resource is probably not effective. But I've had some discussion with Councillor Westwood following your discussions with him on the empty homes, and we think it would be important to see if we can survey those 116 homes and find out why they're empty. I think that would be a good starting point to see whether there are things to do. So that is our intention, is to approach to go through that list and find the reasons for those homes being empty.
Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pick up on the devolution and reorganisation aspects, which we already know will be financially challenging based on the Grant Thornton Learning from New Unitary Council's report, which highlights escalating transformation costs. And it's good to see that there's a provisional budget line for local government reorganisation. But do we have an emerging figure of the likely costs, which we can base it on learning from other areas which have undergone this process so far? I mean, there's no doubt a certainty that no additional government funding will be provided, so early preparation is crucial. So I wonder if you could expand on that and give me some information, please. Thank you.
Well, at this stage, we've formed the budget on the basis of an ongoing concern because nothing is clear. We are fortunate in that we have the transition reserve, which was intended for transformation and to deal with the future deficits, but of course would also be functionally useful for the costs of the transition to unitarisation. But I think Councillor Todd's got slightly more information on some of the potential costs coming forward, although they're not in this budget.
Yes, I can just confirm that we have tasked the consultants that we're working with, all the councils in Hampshire have tasked the consultants that we're working with, that we wish to identify these costs, be clear about the extra cost of transition, and it will be something that we're intending to make sure the government is aware of in our submission to them in March.
Councillor Bolton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Cutler, back on TC25 and the impact, obviously, as it will have of local government reorganisation. I accept that. However, we're going to be in a competitive sort of environment with local government reorganisation and unitary formation. I'm concerned that we need to be in shape over the next few years in terms of our financial outlook, and that what is your proposed plan in terms of a short list of some big things that we might have to stop doing? Because TC25 feels a bit like we're tinkering around the edges and there's nothing substantive that we're going to stop doing. And we might be getting to the point now where you need to pull out your short list of, well, these are the things we're going to have to stop. Do you have such a list? Thank you.
Our intention is to review, TC25 is a continual review process. In terms of the big schemes you were talking about, digitisation of the planning service was one of the key aspects of TC25. And it would be entirely wrong of us to spend the money on digitisation to a planning service that moves into a different authority using a different system. Until we've got clarity about who's going to fold into who, then we can be clear about it, and then it may be that that is the right approach. I disagree with you that it's tinkering around the edges. It's saved £1.4 million without a huge amount of investment. I think that's more than tinkering around the edges if you reduce 1.4 million from the base budget just by improving processes. And we will continue. It is a transformation challenge, and we will continue to challenge heads of services as to where other improvements can be made throughout this year. But we do need to review the approach to digitisation based on the emerging position we will be in as the local government reorganisation develops. I think that's all we can say at the moment.
Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful for the portfolio holder for his previous answer. And I understand the challenges of changing times. However, over the last 2 years, TC25 has recorded £1.3 million, I think it is from papers, of budget benefits. But in that same time, the forecast budget shortfall shown in Appendix A of the paper before us has deteriorated by £2.5 million. TC25 is not keeping up with the increased expenditure of the general fund. This requires more urgent action over and above what was previously planned. So what is the administration intending to do to bring the finances back under control?
I really think it's pushing it a bit, Councillor Godfrey, to say that the finances are out of control when, for the last 5 years, we have had a balanced budget for 2 or 3 years ahead, and then there have always been deficits in the future. We have been addressing that. It has pushed it further out each time until we're very clear about what the government intends to do in terms of revenue funding. It will be very, very difficult to predict where we'll be. And as you say, it is uncertain times at the moment. We need to assess what of the projects that the longer term projects within TC25 that we had planned would be appropriate to take forward, as I said to Councillor Bolton.
Right, are there any more questions? In that case, we will move on to debate, please. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank Councillor Cutler and the finance team for putting together the general fund budget. Well done to the team for the good work. I wanted to pick up on a few items. I wanted to pick up first on planning enforcement and just say it's good to see the additional 200k additional enforcement funding. And I welcome that, having first raised my concerns in this venue back in November. And I look forward to discussing with the portfolio holder for placemaking, how will this funding be allocated for maximum benefit? Will it go towards recruiting additional enforcement staff? If so, how soon? And will we adopt a more decisive approach to enforcement despite potential legal challenges? And I look forward to taking those forward with the portfolio holder. I'd like to commend the package that has been outlined on social support. The vital investment to help our residents through the cost of living crisis is extremely welcome, whether it's the revised council tax reduction, income bands, the extended council tax exceptional hardship fund, and the 300k per year for temporary accommodation to prevent homelessness. However, alongside financial aid, we must also help to tackle the root causes of too many cost of living issues for our residents. And I look forward to working with the administration in trying to address some of these issues. And finally, what I'd like to pick up on now is the climate budget. I note the 200k annual allocation for carbon reduction, which is very welcome, but addressing carbon alone is not enough. And a nature improvement funding provision must be integrated, and it's not just transparent where that is the case, as tackling climate and nature together is more effective. The economic case is strong. Prevention is cheaper than crisis response, and a thriving natural environment underpins long-term prosperity. So can I ask, is there going to be an equitable split between the carbon and nature investments? I look forward for clarity on that, and again, discussing that in due course with a portfolio holder, unless there's an opportunity to have clarity on that tonight. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cremoyson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to support this this budget, obviously, but it's worth saying. I'm going to just focus a little bit, not so much on the detail, but on the process and the way that this is developed. You know, creating a budget, you know, particularly in a public sector thing, is a very complex process. There's a lot of moving parts, and I commend the finance team and Councillor Cutler for keeping control of all those moving parts and keeping, you know, consulting with people on all the various demands and, you know, giving us options. I commend Councillor Cutler for the members' briefing, making sure we all knew what was coming, what was likely to be coming, and giving us advance warning of what we were dependent on. So I think in terms of, and then subsequently it's gone through Cabinet and it's all been in the public domain. We've all had the chance to go and question it there. So here we are, and we have a budget, and it's been, you know, very transparent the way we've got here, and you know, as I look at it, I look at the pieces in it. I think, yeah, we've considered different options, and we've ended up with many things which I really like. I like the investments in our greener, faster area. I like the fact that we are, you know, considering the risk of increased homelessness, and we have put some money aside so that we can deal with that issue, and so on. And there's many other items in there which which I like. So I will be supporting it as much because I feel like it's been transparent how we've got here. We've gone through several steps. We've all had a chance to make our points earlier. And, you know, I'm comfortable with the outcome, and I will be supporting this, this budget. Thank you.
Right, any more in the debate? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. These are strange times for finance teams, and these times are changing fast. While the uncertainty of what will happen in the future has been affected by the government's announcements on local government reorganisation, we still do not know how the City Council's finances will operate once the £3 million per annum of extra business rates income and the £1.8 million of new homes bonus income ceases, as it certainly looks likely that it will after this next year. The favourable position that yet another year of this funding allows Winchester to deliver a balanced budget without any hardship being felt. Although I'm quite certain that Ms Keys and the other excellent members of the finance team have still had to work exceedingly hard to make it look quite so easy. At a time of significant change, the Council does need to be cautious about increasing expenditure and divesting its other assets. The financial reserves provide a valuable protection against the impact of unexpected changes that may well come our way. Similarly, our investment properties should be retained and maintained to optimise their value for the future. The general thrust of this budget would seem to support that approach. Like others, I welcome the funding for the long-needed extra resources for planning enforcement and extra funding for strategic planning to deal with the local plan reviews. However, the underlying spending plans within this budget are not looking positive, and not enough is being done to prepare for the loss of income that is now imminent. I have supported the strategic budget review from its outset. TC25 is an essential process that is delivering some benefits. However, it is not delivering enough. TC25 is supposed to be delivering £3 million per annum savings in expenditure or additional income during the next financial year. This is not going to happen. And in fact, the forecast is degenerating. Rather than needing £3 million per annum for general fund, it now needs to find more than £4.5 million by the end of 2026 financial year. The administration needs to be more robust in its search for financial improvements, and it is time for some hard decisions to be made. It is unacceptable to claim a TC25 saving at £70,000 per annum through planning fee income increases, while in the same budget paper, reducing the forecast of income from planning fees by £200,000 per annum. With such spurious savings being claimed, it is perfectly clear that TC25 is not working, and much greater efforts must be made to reduce unnecessary expenditure and optimise income streams before the new team of the unitary authority for this area sweeps in and discards both the good and the bad in our council. Before this authority is replaced, there's more than enough time for the administration to deal with the rising burdens of the general fund by making a firm commitment to deliver long-term improvements to their financial position. Thank you.
Councillor Laming, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the finance team on an excellent, well-balanced budget. This follows on from the really good budget from the HRA, which was based on keeping people and communities together. I think that was an excellent choice. With this budget, we see that we've got an increase in enforcement, which I welcome, being a long-term critic of enforcement. This year, I will say that we've seen a remarkably good increase in the efficiency of that particular department, so I wholeheartedly will vote for this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Tippett-Cooper, please.
I'd also like to express my support for this budget. This general budget paper and the financial position overall of this council is a superb achievement. Much of the public hears about how difficult local authorities' financial positions are, and while there are challenges, there are many local authorities that are in real trouble, like the one usually in this chamber. But this year's budget from this council shows that we're in a really good position, and as Councillor Cutler has explained, really good financial management has led to that. And it's a budget rooted in this council's core values, and also, like Councillor Lee, I very much welcome the financial support packages for the most financially vulnerable. It's support packages that we can offer as a council because of our shrewd financial management, including things like the £300,000 for temporary accommodation to support homeless individuals in the community. That's a perfect example. And indeed, massive praise should go to our superb housing team, who ensure that for every homeless person we have, they do have a roof over their head, even if it's a temporary one, almost every single person we have. And where there aren't, one or two cases where there aren't, every effort is made. They are absolutely brilliant. Residents will also be absolutely delighted to see us going greener faster, finally getting the food waste collection up and running, which everyone will be really delighted to see. So I congratulate the council once again for this general fund budget, and to Councillor Cutler for leading on it with a lot of improvements that will really benefit our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Tippett-Cooper. Are there any more contributions to the debate? Sorry, Councillor Godfrey.
Point of order. Councillor Todd did not reserve his right to speak. As eager as I am to hear him say anything, I do believe that he is not under the Constitution 20.2.
You're quite correct, Councillor Godfrey. I didn't prompt him with that.
It's absolutely fine. I think it's on.
Yes, we're on tenterhooks.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, I'm not seconding the motion at this point. I'm doing whatever it is I'm allowed to do under the Constitution when we refer a minute from Cabinet. Last month, we agreed a council plan, and this budget is delivering the council plan. We're doing it despite the challenges of local government finance and despite the impact of local government reorganisation. And let's be clear, there was a bit of muddled information coming through in terms of the state of our finances, but if you look at the medium-term financial strategy, we have a balanced budget for 25-26. We're forecasting a balanced budget for 26-27. And yes, there is a challenge of 1.2 million deficit showing in 27-28, but I'm completely confident that we will deliver those savings. And I would like to thank, firstly, the people who've worked on the TC25 programme, but also to Ms Keys and the other officers, and to Councillor Cutler for all their work in preparing this budget. And it does bring our vision and our values to life. We talk about going greener faster, and this shows how we will fund better recycling. We talk about thriving places, and it shows how we will fund better planning enforcement. We talk about healthy communities, and it talks about an improved council tax reduction scheme. It talks about good homes for all, and it has extra support for temporary accommodation. It talks about being effective and efficient, and it shows the savings that we've already achieved from TC25 and the fact that we will continue to drive forward with those transformation programmes. And we talk about listening and learning, and you've heard about the consultation that goes into this plan. It is undoubtedly a tough time for local government finance. But not only are we demonstrating that we have a balanced budget at a time when the Conservative Party running Hampshire is showing an ongoing deficit of £218 million per year without a plan to address it. But we are showing that we have a plan to maintain a budget deficit, and we do have a plan to address it. So I'm really grateful to all the work that's gone into the budget. I'm grateful for the support that people have expressed during the debate. I'm very grateful to the officers for all the work they've done, not just in putting the plan together, but in putting the budget together, but putting in place the plans that sit behind it. I'm really confident in this budget, and I would like you all to support it today. Thank you very much.
Right, Councillor Cutler, would you like to sum up, please?
It's always difficult to sum up after Councillor Todd has spoken, because he's usually done this anyway. But I did want to correct one of the points made by Councillor Godfrey, that I was expecting to be a question for me to answer, so I'm going to answer it now. And when he was talking about the £67,000 savings in the planning in TC25, I can assure him that it's completely separate from the reduction in planning fees. It is a result of pre-planning agreements, charging out time better, and exactly the things that we're looking at TC25, a more commercial, business-like approach. And that has achieved £67,000 worth of extra income, which means that the net figure is 124,000 reduction. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I was just going to say our careful management of the Council's finances has allowed us to once again present a budget which allows us to deliver the Council plan, as Councillor Todd has said. And yet, at the same time, we're maintaining robust reserves to deal with the turbulent times ahead. So that, I think, is short and sweet, but is my summing up.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler.
Thank you. A recorded vote is now required to be taken, members. A reminder that we are now firstly voting on recommendations 1 to 8 of the recommended minute of Cabinet. Thank you.
As required by legislation, I will now put recommendations 1 through to 8 to a recorded vote. The officers will now load the necessary information into the machine, and you can vote. Oh, here we go. If you can vote if you are either in favour of the recommendation or are against. Sorry. Please indicate that you're abstaining from voting. Please press the console next to the option that you would like to vote for. Before the vote is closed, you're able to change your vote, but please ensure that the tick is showing against the vote you wish to cast. The results of the vote will be shown on the screens in the chamber, and these will also be presented in the live broadcast. Please let me know if anyone's having any difficulty with this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, we will shortly be closing the electronic vote, and you will then be unable to change how this has been cast. Please indicate to me now should you require any assistance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, members. The outcome of the recorded vote is as presented on the screens, and I confirm that the recommendations of 1 to 8 are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A recorded vote is now required to be taken on recommendations 9 to 12 of the recommended minute of Cabinet. Thank you.
Right. As required, I will now put the recommendations 9 through to 12 to a recorded vote. And please note, you're able to vote if you're either in favour of recommendation 9 to 12 or against the recommendation, or wish to indicate you are abstaining from voting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, members, we will be shortly closing the electronic vote and you will then be unable to change how this has been cast. Please indicate to me now should you require any further assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, members. The outcome of the recorded vote is as presented on the screens, and I can confirm that the recommendation 9 to 12 are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, Council is now required to consider the Council Tax Resolution for 25-26, which is on pages 97 to 103 of your agenda pack, which includes 2 annexes for information. Again, legislation requires a recorded vote to be taken. Thank you.
Members, I now put the Council Tax Resolution for 2025 to 2026 on pages 97 to 100 of the agenda pack to a recorded vote. Once again, I will advise you when we are ready to commence the recorded vote. Right, you are now able to vote if you're either in favour or against the recommendation, or wish to indicate that you are abstaining from voting. Please press the console next to the option you would like to vote for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, we'll be shortly closing the recorded vote, and you'll be then unable to change how your vote has been cast. So please indicate to me now should you require any assistance.
Thank you, members. The outcome of the recorded vote is as presented on the screens, and I can confirm the Council Tax Resolution on pages 97 to 100 of the agenda pack is agreed. I think we might have a break for 10 minutes to stretch our legs and carry on in 8:30. Of business this evening is agenda item 7, consideration and determination of the recommended minute of Cabinet held on the 12th of February 2025. Mr. John, would you please introduce?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 7 is the recommended minute of Cabinet held on the 12th of February 2025 regarding the Capital Investment Strategy 2025 to 35. And this is set out on your agenda and in the draft minute of Cabinet on page 105. Report CAB 3495 refers, and this is also included in your agenda pack on pages 107 to 150. Please note that there is a typographical error on the draft minute extract on page 105. The heading should read Capital Investment Strategy 2025 to 2035, which is as set out in report CAB 3495. To conclude, Council are recommended to approve the Capital Investment Strategy 2025 to 2035 and the specifics as set out in Recommendation 1 in the recorded minute and the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. John. Could I have a proposer for the recommended minute of the Cabinet?
I'm happy to do so, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cutler, thank you. And do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will second.
And
I will reserve my right, if I may.
Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
I would like to, yes.
Good.
Mr. Mayor.
Right, Councillor Cutler, please, to introduce. Introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, this report sets out the Council's capital spending programme and the principles which underpin this in order to deliver the desired outcomes as set out in the Council plan. It details the overall programme for the next 10 years, how it is financed, the governance around it, the appetite for risk, and the impact on the Council's medium-term financial strategy. The report shows the progress made in 24-25, including in the General Fund, the completion of the pavilion at the KGV and the creation of the Friarsgate Park, among other things, along with the awarding of capital grants as part of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. In the HRA, highlights include completion of the 76 Winnall Flats and the Southbrook Cottages, along with the acquisition of 156 units in Kings Barton and in Twyford. The capital programme over the next 10 years totals £421.1 million, of which 37.9 is general fund and 383.2 million relates to the housing revenue account. Appendix A provides the capital programme by project divided into approved for spend and subject to appraisal. Key projects in this programme are shown in the report shown in the body of the report, detailed by Council Plan priority, and include, for example, 42.3 million for the greener, faster priorities such as investment in energy efficiency and the capital costs of introducing food waste collection. And £358.3 million in the Good Homes for All category, which includes both the new build programme and major repairs and maintenance. The strategy sets out the approval process and the project programme management protocols. It also includes, in the body of the report and Appendix F, several prudential indicators as required by the SIPFA Prudential Code and the Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government Statutory Investment Guidance. Our capital programme continues to be ambitious and crucial to the delivery of the Council plan. The strategy set out in this paper ensures that there is robust governance of the processes required to deliver this capital programme, and I'm sure members will support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler. Are there any questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assets are obviously a key an important part of the numbers that make up our finances, and my question kind of covers some of it. Probably covers the general fund as well as this. So I know concerns have been raised on in a few different areas on assets, on about previous purchases, for example, on Corner House, management of our legacy assets, for example, the River Park Leisure Centre, and maintenance management costs of some buildings, for example, the Guildhall. I don't think today is the right opportunity to go through all of those, and we had a meeting earlier this month on assets, which was a really good start in kind of digging into some of this, but more is needed. And I was just, so my question is, I just wanted confirmation from the Cabinet member that we have a number of those issues that I mentioned just now have been raised in previous committee meetings, that we will get answers and we'll work through all of those issues on those meetings. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to confirm that we'll continue the conversations that we've started with members on this. It actually doesn't relate to the capital strategy at all, and perhaps, but in the previous paper I did point out the transfer of significant funds into the property asset reserve because of the, sort of some of the real issues we have, particularly with the Guildhall.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler. Any more questions, please? Right. In that case, we'll go on to debate. Right. In that case, we'll call on Martin Todd to speak, please.
Thank you very much indeed, and I won't be using the right of reply that I'll have at the end of the debate as well. What can I say? I'd like to thank Councillor Cutler again for presenting the financial plan that sits before us today, but also the officers for all the work that's gone into sitting behind it. It gives me a chance to make a comment on the excellence of the work that's been done. The capital programme, the housing revenue account, which I couldn't talk about a bit earlier. But overall, I think this is a really strong capital programme. I'm grateful to all the work that's gone into it, and I would ask Council to support it this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Cutler, if you would like to sum up, please.
I think I would only be repeating myself if I summed up. My introduction contained virtually everything I wanted to say, so I'll repeat the last paragraph, which is that our capital programme continues to be ambitious, crucial to the delivery of the council plan, and it ensures the strategy set out in this paper ensures that there is robust governance of these processes. So I hope members can support it.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler. Is the recommended minute of the Cabinet as set out in the agenda and in the recommended minute agreed? Right. I think we can agree the recommended minute of the Cabinet is agreed and supported. Right, the next item of business this evening is agenda item 8, consideration and determination of the recommended minute of Cabinet held on the 12th of February 2025. Mr. John, could you please introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 8 is the recommended minute of Cabinet held 12th of February 2025 regarding the Treasury Management Strategy 2025 to 26. And this is set out on your agenda and in the draft minute of Cabinet on page 151. Report CAB 3496 refers, and this is also included in your agenda pack on pages 153 to 183. To conclude, Council are recommended to approve the Treasury Management Strategy and the specifics set out in recommendations 1 to 3 in the recommended minute and the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. Could I have a proposer for the recommended minute of the Cabinet, please?
Mr. Mayor, I will propose.
Councillor Cutler. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will second, but I'd like to reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Right, thank you. Councillor Cutler, if you would like to introduce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can see that members' eyes are beginning to glaze over at a fourth financial paper in a row. But I do feel it's important to emphasise the importance of the Treasury Management Strategy. The capital strategy showed the scale of our ambition and included details of our borrowing policy and requirements. At the same time, the General Fund paper described our reserve levels. But at any one time, the Council holds considerably more money than this, including Section 106 money, unspent grants, cash receipts from rents and council tax. Some of these funds are borrowed internally. It's always cheaper to do this than pay higher interest rates borrowing externally while receiving lower rates for money invested. It's particularly as it needs to be held in very low risk investments. However, it's crucially important that enough funds are available for the day-to-day running of the Council. The Treasury Management Strategy seeks to strike this balance by setting a series of rules and limits that minimise the risk to the Council. It sets the borrowing strategy, sources of borrowing, and the minimum balances to be held and invested in the short term. This function is carried out by the Hampshire County Council Treasury Investment Team under a service level agreement. The strategy sets the parameters under which this team manages these funds. The Council forecasts that the balance managed will average £30 million in 25-26 with a return of around about 4%, giving a yield of 1.2 million. Not an insignificant sum given our current the current financial climate. The SIPFA code requires that the Council invests its funds prudently, having regard first to security, and then liquidity, and finally looking at the returns. Therefore, the objective is to strike an appropriate balance between risk and return. The paper details how this is achieved. I shall endeavour to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler. Questions, please. Councillor Pett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. I'd just like a reassurance from the portfolio holder that having an authority as custodian of our treasure that has run up such a magnificent deficit, is that a sound move?
Thank you for your question. This is a service level agreement with the Treasury team at Hampshire County Council. It saves us, and probably we could not justify employing the expertise. The funds are completely ring-fenced, and this strategy sets the parameters by which they work. It's monitored by the Section 151 officer on a regular basis, and we have further advice from our advisors. I'll enclose as to how to approach that strategy. So I would say there is no risk in it being held in this building or in this at the top of the hill rather than at the bottom of the hill.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've generally shared Councillor Cutler's very positive view of Treasury management treatment. But I would ask him to go further than he has, and just confirm that he has absolute confidence in the ability of the officers of Hampshire County Council to deliver the Treasury management service that they have been contracted to provide. And that the disparaging remarks made by our colleague across the floor about any political interference can be ignored safely.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. I can confirm absolute confidence in the process. I do feel you slightly misinterpreted Councillor Pett, who probably, as a newer councillor, did not understand how ring-fenced it was within the system.
Right. Any more questions? Can we move smoothly on to debate then? Councillor Cremoyson.
I'll stay standing. It may have surprised people that there'll be someone willing to stand up in debate here. I'm responding to Councillor Cutler's plaintive cries for people to pay attention to the Treasury report, the Treasury paper. I have to say it's a difficult read, and I've read it before and I found it hard to understand, but this time I've invested a bit more time and I've been on A&G, Audit and Governance, for those of you who are not familiar with the abbreviation, this year. So I've heard from the Treasury team a little bit there, and I'm starting to understand it, and Councillor Cutler has helped to clarify the role here. Now, I think he's right, it is important. It's a very important role, but it's also a very technical role in an accounting sense. So for lay people like me, who are not accountants, it is a challenge to sort of understand it all and to really get to grips with it. But, you know, so my approach to things is like this is I'll poke at it a few times and I'll see if I find anything that I feel uncomfortable about. And I have poked at it and I haven't felt anything that I felt worried about. And I would also just say, make a comment about Councillor Pett's question. A part of our role here as councillors is to ask the questions, and particularly the opposition's role here, is to ask the questions that people in our community might have. And people in our community might think, oh gosh, County Council's finances in a difficult position. Is that a reflection of the competency? And I think what we've heard in Audit and Governance from the Treasury team is absolutely not. They're really, 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 really good. They know what they're doing. They have the technical skills. And you know, we have to just, you know, accept that there are sometimes, you know, these ring-fence skills where they know what they're doing. They're very competent. Our money, our Treasury money is protected. So I'm comfortable with Councillor Cutler's response to Councillor Godfrey's remarks there. So all in all, I'm happy to support this paper, and I'll do a better job next year of trying to dig a bit deeper and be able to talk a bit more knowledgeably about it. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Todd, if you would like to speak a bit.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Treasury management is one of those things that's invisible when it works well and an absolute nightmare when it goes wrong. And I would like to thank the officers at Winchester, Hampshire, and our external advisors for enabling us all to sleep well in our beds. And I would also like to actually thank those members who serve on Audit and Governance and have taken the opportunity to keep an eye on the work in this particular area. And I would support Councillor Godfrey in saying that it's important that we don't blame officers for the financial difficulties at Hampshire County Council. I fully agree with him. The failure there is wholly a matter of political leadership and the failures of the Conservative Party.
Thank you. Councillor Cutler, would you like to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased that there has been some interest in this paper. And I'm pleased that we've been able to also publicly endorse our confidence in the Hampshire County Council Treasury Management team. A good Treasury management is crucial to the stability and day-to-day management of the finances of the Council. Our strategy has been successful in managing this process, and each iteration, each year, has subtle changes, particularly in the limits to address our changing times and circumstances. So I'm sure you'll all be able to support this paper.
Right. Thank you. Is the recommended minute of the Cabinet as set out in the agenda and in the recommended minute agreed? Can I agree? Thank you. The recommended minute of the Cabinet is agreed. Right, the next item of business this evening is agenda item 9, Winchester City Council Constitution Updates 2025. Mr. John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, report CL173 is included in your agenda pack on pages 185 to 236 and is a periodic review of the Council's constitution undertaken by the Monitor Officer, as is required in accordance with Article 15 of the Constitution. The substantive updates and amendments that have been made are principally in response to the recent enactment of the Procurement Act 2023 and its associated regulations. And these are set out in track changes for members' information at the appendix to the report from page 191. Members, therefore, in accordance with Article 15 of the Constitution, I'm reporting these updates and amendments to full council and ask that these are duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. Are there any questions for the monitoring officer, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question. I'm looking at para 3.2, para B, maximise public benefit whilst delivering sustainability and social value. Do we believe that just stating delivering sustainability without qualifying that is sufficient given our declaration in this council of a climate emergency and a nature emergency? Thank you.
Johns.
Thank you. So these have been extensively researched by the procurement team, and quite a bit of work has gone into these amendments. I think at the end of the day, these are our contract standing orders, so that they would be expected to uphold and pick up on all the other themes that are brought out through council policies. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, may I just follow up with a supplementary? Yes. Is it possible to amplify exactly what we mean? I mean, we talk about green contracting, green procurement. Surely standards have moved on, and would it not be worth clarifying that within our constitution? Thank you.
I can certainly take that away and have a look at it and consider whether we amend it further, which I could bring forward next time. Thank you. Sorry.
Just to clarify, I'll keep standing. At part 5 of the, so if you continue on, keep scrolling down, it talks about sustainable procurement, and then there's a definition, and it does expand on it in greater detail. So it's not just those two words. There is an explanation.
Yeah, I was going to...
Councillor Becker.
I was going to ask the monitoring officer whether paragraph 5.2b, where it explicitly states that the definition is based on the 3 pillars of sustainability, environment, social and economic, and 2b says the council has declared a climate change and nature emergency across the borough and set a target of being a carbon neutral district by 2030. So I wondered if that was maybe the interpretation that's already written in there that maybe we should be taking into account.
Right, thank you. Councillor Godfrey and then Councillor Horrell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having had an Audit and Governance Committee meeting earlier this week, was it only this week? Yes. I'm a little surprised to see this paper coming straight to Council. I wonder if there's although welcoming the presence of changes being made to the Constitution, so it becomes a living document, it has been my expectation that these changes would come either to Audit and Governance Committee before coming to Council, or in more detailed changes to the Constitution Working Group, a subgroup of the Audit and Governance Committee. I wonder why it's come direct to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. So these amendments that have been brought forward have been made under the Monitoring Officer delegation as set out in Article 15.3 of the Constitution. So they constitute legislative updates or minor amendments to the Constitution. Anything that was considered to be major would, of course, go through the Audit and Governance Committee on its way to full council. Thank you.
Councillor Horrell, please.
Mr Mayor, thank you. The monitoring officer has just addressed the question that was similar to the one I would be asking. Thank you.
Right, okay. Now, shall we go on to debate in that case, if there is any debate? Right, okay, let's, the recommendation of report C173 is that we note the updates and amendments. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Those updates and amendments have been duly noted. Now, we have one more motion this evening, and the agenda sets out this evening's motion, which is to be moved by Councillor Wallace. This is in page 7 of your agenda pack, and it's actually been amended, and I have agreed that this altered version, which is as set out in the supplementary agenda, is therefore before us this evening. The altered version of the motion shows in tracking the changes made to the originally submitted motion. Councillor Wallace, do you have a seconder for your motion, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to second the motion, and I reserve my right to speak until the end.
Councillor Wallace, you have 8 minutes to present your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sure I'm not going to need 8 minutes. It's been a long evening. First to explain the amendment, obviously we submitted a motion, but since the original motion was submitted, I had a chance to get with the Cabinet member who has suggested some amendments, and we were happy to go with those amendments, so this is the motion that is before us today. The energy improvements and business case for installing solar panels on domestic properties is well established. Almost 1 in 10 households in the Winchester district already has a registered solar system and have started to realise both the environmental and financial benefits. On the environmental side, solar panels play a key part in both the current government and the previous government's energy strategies, contributing to domestic energy production and helping with our move towards energy independence. The Council has set a target for Winchester District to become carbon neutral by 2030. Solar contributes to achieving this goal. Effectively, we need solar panels on every near-south facing roof in the district. On the financial side, the business case for residential solar is well established, typically saving each household where solar panels are installed £600 a year. And business models for installing solar PV on council homes are more complicated, but have been proven by other councils and include, for example, establishing a power purchase agreement, whereby the council installs the solar panels, then sells power to residents at below market rates. Under this agreement, payback is typically 5 to 8 years. After that time, profits from the scheme could be returned to the main housing account and could be used for further improvements to housing stock. Winchester City Council is responsible for providing a management and maintenance service to over 5,000 council properties throughout the Winchester district. This equates to roughly 1 out of every 10 properties in our district. Whilst work has started to improve the energy efficiency of these properties, to date, none of these properties have been retrofit with solar panels. Supporting this motion today is the first step in the process towards retrofitting solar onto council homes. Supporting this motion will task officers to undertake a feasibility study for installing solar on Winchester council homes. In particular, and before fitting any panels, to ensure that we have a model that works both for our tenants and for the council. I hope you will support the motion before you today so that we can start this process. Thank you.
Right. Debate, please. Councillor Westwood, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Watts for bringing this motion to Council, and I'd also like to thank him for accepting my amendment to his motion. There's a lot we're already planning to do and a lot that we are doing, and I wanted the motion to capture that. Installing solar panels on our council homes is not something new. In fact, we have been doing this since 2011, when our first solar panels were installed on a house in Stanmore. And we have a track record of continuing to deliver energy-efficient new homes and solar panels in Stanmore, with the latest development of the homes in the valley, delivered in 2021, having roof-mounted solar panels on all blocks. And this brings the total number of solar panels on council homes in Stanmore to over 300, which should please Councillor Scott. But it's not just Stanmore. We have 700 solar panels, more than 700 solar panels on council homes in 12 wards across our district, both on individual homes and on community blocks. That includes the extra care apartments at Chesil Lodge, opened in 2018, which has minimal heating costs and has solar panels installed on the roof. However, it's not just about solar panels. It's important to link the solar panels to modern building standards and the removal of fossil fuels from our properties. In the last year, we've delivered 2 passive house developments complete with solar panels. One being the 73 new flats in Winnell, the 3 houses associated with them. These homes are accredited to passive house, low energy build standards, have 0 fossil fuels and solar panels on the roof. And in December last year, we delivered the 6 energy efficient passive house plus houses at Southbrook Cottages in Mitcheldelver. And they also use no fossil fuels and incorporate solar panels on the roof. But we're not stopping there. Over the last 3 years in the UK, solar panel prices have generally been trending downwards, and I agree with Councillor Wallace in his view of the market and the opportunities there. There's been a significant drop in cost per watt, which now allows us to bring this technology into our retrofit programme, as you've heard from me earlier this evening in the HRA paper and from Councillor Wallace just now. I've already talked about the retrofit programme and extending that programme to include panels and batteries significantly, not just panels, to ensure that we can get to EPCC on our most difficult to insulate homes. But in addition, we've also applied for funding under the Social Housing Fund Way 3 grant to extend the installation of solar PV and batteries to more of our council homes, and we expect to hear this month whether we've been successful for that. And that will enable us to take the installation of solar panels beyond purely those most energy inefficient council homes to get to EPCC, but take us into the wider retrofit programme. Which is really the model. Looking forward, we need to be able to take advantage of any new opportunity from government or from partner organisations, as Councillor Wallace has talked about, to fund solar panels for many more of our homes. And with energy costs remaining high, rising again this coming April, combined with declining solar panel and battery costs, this is the right time to reassess the options for installing the panels more broadly across our council houses. However, it will come at a cost. And Councillor Wallace alluded to the need for a proper business model to allow this to happen. And we need to understand how we can achieve this in the most cost-effective manner and how we can pay for it. So a decade ago, the average payback period for solar panel system was around 10 to 12 years. By last year, this had been reduced to 7 to 9 years. It costs roughly £5,000 to £6,000 to put a solar array on a 2 or 3 bedroom house. If you add batteries, that'll add an additional roughly £5,000. So you're probably looking at £11,000 of property. The cost savings could be up to £600 to £700 annually for doing that work. But in addition to the installation costs, there are ongoing maintenance costs with the panels and with the installed kit, but also including replacement of component parts. So batteries do need replacing as they come to end of life, and there is a life, you know from your phones you can recharge them so often, and then you have to go back to the supplier and say, can I have a new one, please? And also the digital inverters that are part of the solution as well have roughly a 10-year life. So despite the panel cost declining, significant funding would be required to install solar on council homes. The funding options that are available, such as obtaining funding from the government, which we're already doing, or other sources, such as partnering with solar installers who provide free installations, so effectively rent your rooftop and install, and then take a fair slice of the profits as well from that, or maybe in partnership one of the large energy providers. And the other side to this coin is linking in your panels, your use of your home with the correct tariffs. So it's probably a very good idea to start talking to some of those energy providers as well about tariffs. We have a significant number of homes in the Winchester district. I'm sure that's an interesting conversation. However, if funded from the HRA, funding would need to be on a self-funded basis that does not leave a deficit HRA budget as per any capital investment from HRA funds. The experience that we have from the use of solar panels in our newer homes, plus the experience we're gaining from installing solar panels and battery technology into our existing homes, is vital in helping us look at viable business options for extending the installation of solar panels and batteries into more of our council homes. I've already requested the officers to bring forward a decarbonisation of council homes policy paper to Cabinet to support the council planned climate change objectives for 2030. This policy paper will inevitably include solar panels as a component of the strategy, but on the basis that we are using existing resources, using the learnings from our previously implemented projects and the experience gained from the retrofit project, I'm happy to support this motion to take viable options to install solar PV on council homes to the Economy and Housing Policy Committee for review and comment, and then on to report on to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is sort of a question wrapped up in a debate, if I can quite work that one through. Because when we had the grand reveal in that sort of Paul Daniels style of how the Winchester City's carbon neutrality targets were going to be met this year by taking 400 million of council assets, council houses, and plonking them in the district. One of the big reasons for that was because we had no control over their energy provision. So this is going back to partly what Councillor Westwood was talking about. What I'm worried about is for the upheaval and involvement of people that live in these, and you've already said you're all really worried about upsetting families over the pursuit of the green agenda. If there's any chance of them not receiving benefit from this, then that seems rather unfair. And I'm unclear as to how, when they purchase their power, how, and please, if someone can explain that to me, how the benefit of having solar panels on their houses would automatically bring them a benefit, because I'm unclear about that. And I think that's a very important part of the green agenda, is to bring that benefit to members of our district. So if we could, in the debate, manage to clarify that, I'd be hugely grateful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, this is a debate rather than a questioning, but perhaps Councillor will do that in his summing up. We've now got Councillor Lee, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, I'd like to pick up on the point that's just been raised. It's manifest that solar PV provides increased financial security for tenants, reducing reliance on the expensive grid electricity. It helps with better budgeting for our tenants to manage unpredictable price fluctuations and shields them from full hikes in prices. So I think there's an immediate benefit there. And some may argue that it's unfair that tenants in homes unsuitable for rooftop solar would miss out on benefits, but this is not supported by the facts. Highcliffe Climate Action Group has engaged with tenants in many of the Winchester City Council properties and found no objections for this situation. And thankfully, dynamic sharing technology is now with us and will allow us to enable householders without solar panels to share energy generated from nearby homes. This could ensure a fairer distribution of benefits and reduce wasted energy rather than sending surplus electricity back to the inefficient national grid with high transmission losses. And that's important for our carbon neutrality action plan, I suggest. A notable dynamic sharing case study in Cardiff potentially reduced multiple home occupancy of each unit's electricity bills by up to 50%. If just 75% of these 5,000 homes were fitted with solar PV, and with a conservative generation estimate on back of my fact packet, the savings would be substantial. I already mentioned up to 600. I calculate up to potentially up to £805 per home per year in reduced energy costs. That's a total of 3 million in total annual savings across all tenant housing. 2 tons of CO2 avoided per home, a total equivalent to driving around the Earth 211 times. So if this motion feasibility study is successful, it will be a massive win for tenants, our environment, and the Council's long-term sustainability goals, and the next unitary authorities that might follow Winchester as part of local government reorganisation. I fully support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Cremoyson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first, I currently intend to support the motion unless someone comes up with a major gotcha, which I'm not expecting to happen. I'm supporting it because of the amendments as much as anything. The original motion, there's parts of it that I really support. The aspiration of the outcome I support, but there was a sort of a sense of this being done to rather than done with is how it came over to me, and I wasn't comfortable with that. And I think the amendments address that issue. So, you know, the amendments highlight that the council already has a track record of delivering energy efficient homes and incorporating solar panels. So there's already expertise in the council on how to do solar panels. The council has a retrofit program and has done more than 500 homes. The important part for me of the program isn't that it's solar panels or insulation or anything, but it's the bit that's very specific to this council, which is the method of engaging with our tenants and working with them and, you know, offering them a choice and selling them the benefits of what is being offered to them and allowing them to make the choice and to engage with the program rather than have it done to them. And that, I think, is the really important part of what this council, the intellectual property that this council has developed over the years, and which is showing benefit in terms of the acceleration of the retrofit program. And, you know, once you've done it for one technology, you can do it for another technology. I think the amendments make it clear that the proposals that come from this can dovetail into the existing programs and into the budget setting and the council plan for 26-27, rather than treating it as a separate project. Now, I'm not saying that's what you intended, but it's certainly what came through to me. I think integrating it into existing processes is always a better way of getting things done than trying to invent a new process. So I am supporting the motion. I'm very comfortable to support the motion, with those amendments being critical to me. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, please, and then Councillor Tippett-Cooper.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll keep my comments brief so that others can still contribute in the time remaining. I will be supporting the motion. I appreciate the amendments that have been added in. The motion itself is to support a feasibility study, which I think is the key part around this motion. I share concerns from Councillor Bolton, and you know, reading it just on its own, there are lots of questions I have. There's lots of questions around, especially on the last paragraph of this council notes, in regards to sort of staff time liaising with our residents. There are also concerns in regards to sort of outsourcing and rental schemes to sort of renting out roofs for solar schemes, especially when our tenants have the right to buy, and future issues then with ownership in regards to the panels. So I hope that the feasibility study will answer sort of many questions that I and others do have, and I'm sure we'll enjoy some scrutiny once it's complete.
Yes, briefly to say for me as well, I also welcome the motion and will support it. And I indeed welcome the collaboration between Councillor Wallace and Councillor Westwood in getting a motion that we can all agree on. And this does sort of demonstrate this council does do everything possible on renewable energy. In fact, that is within the council's very DNA to do so. In terms of resident support, I would just draw the council's attention to a survey that ran in summer 2023. It showed the vast majority of our residents supported council's work to generate more renewable energy generally, and also point out and praise the council's work for solar panels on businesses too. I know the team are always looking to do more, and I know the great work is happening, such as the solar panels that are set up on Marwell Zoo and the Biffa Waste Depot, for example. So praise there.
Thank you. Councillor Horrell, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I absolutely understand the aspiration for this motion before us this evening. And I, like some of the other speakers, feel it is important to ensure that this suggestion fits into the overall retrofit process. We have some excellent officers who have learnt enormously in the last year or two, and how we might work effectively with our tenants, because tenant engagement is going to be crucial, and that practicality of the implementation and their understanding. So I do feel it is essential that this doesn't become a separate project, but is actually part of our overall approach in this important area. Because we've already learned that there are better outcomes in terms of retrofit for some types of properties than others. We have sort of horses for courses, as it were. And so I would recommend, as we go forward and look at this, that we ensure we look at the approach for solar PV in the context of the broader retrofit strategy, the one that we've now amended, and looking further to enhance in the current budget, and to ensure that from a budget and personnel point of view, we can actually do justice to this. Thank you.
Any more contributions to the debate? In that case, Councillor White, if you would like to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the interesting points made in the debate. So just to sum up why we need this motion and why you should support it this evening. So as Councillor Williams pointed out, all this motion requires the council to do is to carry out a feasibility study for solar panels on our housing stock using existing resources and experience. The work aligns with what the council are already doing in terms of looking into further decarbonisation of our housing stock. It could potentially unlock transformative benefits, as pointed out by Councillor Lee, allowing the council to achieve its ambition of going greener faster, but also providing potential long-term economic advantages for the council and future-proofed housing for tenants. And if not now, then when? As Councillor Westwood pointed out, now is the time. In a week where we've heard announcements about a further rise in the energy price cap, it is ever more urgent to increase the council's use of solar panels to reduce energy bills. The council must seize the opportunity provided by the development of more efficient, cost-effective technologies, as well as by the innovative solutions and business models offered by local companies that are now tailored to the needs of council's housing. As we've heard in the debate, these schemes are not without risks and challenges in terms of upfront costs or the ongoing maintenance costs, and ensuring equity of benefit across the tenant base, for example. However, a feasibility study of the current market models will investigate what viable practical options are available for councils and is therefore worth exploring. It is noted that the council's retrofit programme will now include the possible options of solar PV and battery storage to be considered alongside the fabric improvements to the building to raise the energy performance ratings. Here is an opportunity to investigate how the council could scale up and critically speed up this process of decarbonisation of housing. By outsourcing to one of the local companies who are now running these schemes, there is very little extra staffing resource required. It could also have the added benefit of stimulating green business in our local economy. And Councillor Bolton was questioning what the wider benefits are, and that could be another benefit. In supporting this motion, we are showing leadership in making a very strong commitment to further reducing carbon and producing housing fit for the future. In the face of this uncertainty surrounding future local government arrangements, we will send a clear message to council staff, residents and neighbouring authorities about our ambition to achieve the best possible housing for our tenants within any future combined unitary authority. And so what about the tenants? As Councillor Cremoyson mentioned about how this council engages with tenants so well. And from attending housing committee meetings, it's notable how the council's housing department put the needs of our tenants at the heart of their decisions. This motion gives us an opportunity to explore how solar panels can unlock further benefits for tenants. Lower energy bills in the face of yet more price increases, more comfortable, healthy housing fit for the future, energy resilience in increasingly turbulent times. I'm grateful to Councillor Wallace for his work over many months researching these schemes, and to the officers and Councillor Westwood who gave up their time to discuss and help shape the amended motion that you are presented with. A truly collaborative effort, which I hope you feel you can support. Thank you.
I ask Councillor Wallace to exercise his right of reply to the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor White did a super job of answering most of the questions. There's some really, really good points raised in the debate by everybody. They're ones we've been thinking about as well, and they are really important, whether it's in all the areas. There are answers to them, and I'm not going to go through it today, but we need to actually do, the whole purpose of this is so that we start doing a feasibility study so we can dig into it and make sure that those answers are the right answers for this council and our tenants. And then it's the first step, and then we can go out and hopefully we can then go forward from there, engaging more thoroughly with our tenants on how to make this work for them and for us. So I hope you'll support it. Hopefully we can get going. We have 5,000 properties in the Winchester district, so we can make a real difference here. So I hope you support this. Thank you.
Right, members, is Councillor Wallace's motion agreed? Thank you. The motion is agreed. The next item of business this evening is agenda item 11, changes to committee membership. Mr. John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've not been notified of any changes to committees on this occasion. Thank you.
Right, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 12, which is questions from members of the council. Members who have submitted questions will be invited in turn to either to read out their questions or refer to them as set out, and it will be in the order that they've been published on the council's website. And I would remind you that the procedure rules allows 40 minutes for questions and answers, and the supplementary questions, and the time allowed is not more than 40 minutes. Right, let's go on to question 1. Oops, wrong one.
Sorry, that all came a bit suddenly.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Question 1, Neil Bolton, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Councillor Thompson. Given the latest concerning economic outlook for business in Winchester, what is the administration specifically doing to counter the headwinds in order to stimulate growth? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton, for your question. Sorry, I've got caught up in my chair. I agree, it is a very challenging time for businesses across our district. The combination of the previous government's disastrous economic policies, alongside the horrendous war in Ukraine and soaring inflation, saw our trade and economy crash. All of this, coupled with the Labour government's national insurance hike, means that businesses and indeed councils, because we have struggled to cover the national insurance hit, have been hit particularly hard. But not every area is a disaster, and the choices made by this administration mean that our district continues to outperform many other areas. As an example, on Monday, The Guardian reported a CBI report highlighting that the net zero economy is growing at triple the rate of the UK economy overall, providing high-wage jobs and increasing energy security. And that is what lies at the heart of our economic development strategy, our green economic development strategy. While we're not in a position to deal with the full costs of the national insurance change, the war in Ukraine or Brexit, we have successfully been working to help businesses reduce their costs and carbon footprint, and, where appropriate, succeed in this high-growth sector. Our website signposts businesses to where they can find help and advice on green business grants, as well as offering businesses help and advice on how to reduce energy bills and a lot more. The GEDS action plan has meant that we have prioritised access to training courses for businesses across our district. One example is the very popular workshops we have provided on artificial intelligence. These have enabled businesses to take advantage of the opportunities that this new technology brings and learn more about how the new technology can help. Projects supporting green growth also proved extremely popular when distributing our shared prosperity funding. Our supportive approach to the green economy has also played a role in bringing in new investment. The InstaVolt EV charging station, as well as new battery storage and the anaerobic digester being built just off the A34, is a really good example. Another is the recently installed training bays at Sparsholt College, upskilling the workforce on fitting solar panels and EV chargers. As a district council, our tools to tackle the national headwinds are limited. But by supporting high-growth investment while continuing to work alongside local businesses across the district, we believe we can help our businesses stay better positioned to thrive despite the national challenges so many face.
Do you have a supplementary, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do indeed. In the words of Roy Schneider, I think we're going to need a bigger boat. I'm particularly concerned about the latest Business Barometer report from Winchester Bid, so much so that I decided to meet to discuss the report with Paul Spencer of Winchester Bid and with the authors, Professor John Kind and Sarah Arnold. My takeaway from these meetings and the report is one of deep concern about the medium-term future for businesses in Winchester and other market towns across the district. There is a national decline in footfall in town centres of about 2%. Although a recent survey of 62 cities in January this year showed footfall had declined by 5% per year, 5% year on year. Concerns about declining footfall is most important issue keeping retail managers and owners awake at night. I need not remind you that even a small 2% compound aggregate reduction in footfall over a 10-year period would result in an overall 18% decline. This would devastating to any town or city centre. I'll get to the point. Yes, it's so important, Mr. Mayor. I hope you'll give me some forgiveness. If that turns out to be more like 5%, then there could mean a 40% reduction. Parking issues have been cited as a main gripe, particularly by the retail and hospitality sector. In the hospitality sector, sales are down 10% and footfall is down by 15% year on year, and their outlook is gloomy for sales in 25. Winchester's high rents, high business rates...
I think, Councillor Bolton, we get the gist of it. Can we just have the question,
It's
please?
so important that you understand the context.
Yes.
Rather than a business environment struggling along, it would be one a disastrous tipping point. Here's the question. Other cities across the country have faced similar problems for longer, and we can learn from them. So will the administration agree to formulate and implement a plan for arresting the decline in footfall in Winchester and look to include other market towns across the district to avoid the devastating consequences of doing nothing? Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that rather unusual supplementary, which I don't think you mentioned any of that in your original question. Anyway, well, I'm delighted to talk about footfall because actually, well, you are absolutely right. There has been a national decline in footfall throughout the country, but in Winchester, we are bucking the trend. And, you know, I'm getting a bit fed up with members of the opposition actually doing down our high street. I have read it. I was at the original meeting where we discussed it. There are real reasons for that footfall across, well, nationally really, and one of them is actually climate change, because we have seen extraordinary weather events over the last 18 months or so. However, what I wanted to say was we are doing extremely well, and if you look at the figures that were produced by the bid for this week's bid board meeting, where we've got comparisons with nearby likewise towns of Salisbury and Basingstoke, actually, we are still punching above our weight. And I think that is something to celebrate. The other thing is, of course, we are, in order to improve our footfall, we have upgraded our Visit Winchester website. We are promoting all the events that take place, all our festivals that take place, not only in the city, but also across the district. And that is one of the ways we can actually improve our footfall, by encouraging people to come to those events and obviously publicising them. The other thing is, as you know, if you've read those papers, we have one of the lowest vacancy rates in our high street of, within the country. It's still around 5%. The national average is 13 to 14%. And I think when shops become vacant, they are turned over extremely quickly. And I think that just proves that businesses do want to come and trade here. And they want to come trade here because we do have fantastic footfall and we are a place where they are happy to invest. Thank you.
Right, question 2, Councillor Tippett-Cooper.
Thank you. I don't have a Roy Snyder quote or a speech, you'll be pleased to hear. The new River Park Pavilion, announced recently by Winchester City Council, will see a brilliant new sports and community facility in River Park. How are things progressing with this new project?
Councillor Becker, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. As you know, I'm absolutely delighted to provide an update on this project, which has been going for such a long time, and I am very happy to report that the project is now continuing to proceed at pace. The tender process closed on February the 21st. We received 9 tenders, including several from local and regional firms, which is brilliant. We are analysing and evaluating the tenders at the moment, and we expect we'll be able to appoint a contractor within the coming weeks. Part of that process will include considering the potential contractors' lead-in times and the duration of the construction. but we anticipate that the build will start in May 2025 with completion in early 2026. And I don't need to remind all of you what an amazing time frame that is given the length of this project. So I really, really look forward to seeing that pavilion open and being enjoyed by our community.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Tippett?
Mercifully, I don't, but other than to say very many congratulations to Councillor Becker for her superb work on this project.
Right. Question 3, Councillor Horrell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Councillor Porter. Can the portfolio holder please confirm that Winchester City Council is still committed to defending the draft local plan, I think we're calling it 2040, that has been submitted to the inspector for approval this spring, when we are being swamped by developers who believe that they should have their site included in our plan? Thank you.
Councillor Porter, please.
Thank you. It won't surprise you that this council remains absolutely committed to defending our 2040 local plan. It's a vital tool to ensure that any new development is properly considered and has the infrastructure it needs associated with it. As you all know, we now have the date set for the inspector to hold the examination in public. The matters to be debated have been published. The start date is the 22nd of April, and the matters have also been published too. You'll know too that having worked on this plan for a number of years, Winchester City Council and I will be robustly defending the policies and proposals in the draft plan. The inspector will determine whether the plan is sound and able to deliver homes and employment. It's important to note also that the inspection process has changed slightly versus previous plans, and the inspector will not be making any decisions on whether to include specific sites that are not already listed in the plan. The choice they're making is simple. Is the plan sound or not? We continue to believe that it's sound, and we'll be putting forward the strongest possible case on that basis. Our planning teams will continue to assess applications that are going on now against the current local plan and the emerging local plan 2040, which is gaining in materiality as it nears adoption.
Do you have a supplementary, please?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the portfolio holder for her reply. So, could the portfolio holder please confirm that the inspector's role is not to change the plan, provided it is deemed to be sound and legally compliant? And what evidence do we have that that will be fulfilled? And therefore main modifications are not necessary from the inspector, and that indeed the council itself is not intending to make any additional modifications which we are entitled to do. And I ask that question of you, Councillor Porter, in the context of the inspector, as you say, indicating that he will not be discussing the merits of the emission sites, which are clear, and developers making representation to the inspector to indicate that the plan is not sound or legally compliant. And those phrases are absolutely crucial. So it would be helpful to get your understanding, please, of why we believe, what evidence do we have that we will be sound and legally compliant. Thank you.
Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I think that the matters that have been requested and asked show that that's what the inspector, which actually is a lady, so she will be looking at. The interesting point is that we have to have that a number of topics covered, which we've been preparing for, and those are very well covered in our work towards this local plan. And we continue to offer topic papers which we feel confident will remain sound. In the years from 2020 to now, despite the challenge of COVID-19 and nutrient neutrality, Winchester City Council has exceeded the number of homes required to be built in the district. And so we can show that we are well ahead of our figures that we were required to produce. And we believe that the Winchester City Council has shown its determination to have that sound local plan by a full engagement within the planning process. And we are well known as a council for taking part and responding to those advice from the advisory service. So I do believe that we've done everything we can possible to prove that we have made sure that the soundness of our plan is not an uncertainty, but it is a certainty. Going back to the point you were making about modifications, I've recently been to another local plan conversation or inspection in order to listen to the way in which they've changed slightly. It appears that the informative text become minor modifications, but any change in the policy becomes a major modification, even if it's just a few words. So I can't guarantee at this point that a major modification would not be required of us at this point.
Question for Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Councillor Lerney. Rising temperatures and biodiversity loss continues to threaten community well-being and sustainable economic growth. We must continue to try and overcome bureaucracy, resource constraints and weak government direction for climate and nature actions, especially as devolution and local government reorganisation risk stalling and stopping some vital initiatives. The absence of a national climate and nature bill further delays coordinated action. And I suggest there are 4 key actions which might help. Urge government to strengthen climate and nature mandates in the devolution white paper. Otherwise, the Strategic Combined Authority will lack the mandate, resources and accountability necessary to drive climate and nature actions effectively. And I've referenced the South East of England's Climate Alliance analysis, along with other regional experts in support of that. The second action, provide guidance for members and the public to enhance responses to the Hampshire and Solent devolution consultation, which is underway at the moment. I think that would be useful. Consider improvements for cross-portfolio coordination within Winchester City Council to enhance actions on these interlinked crises as part of the new council plan. And then finally, establish an early interim climate and nature strategy and action plan with new unitary partners when they are known to minimise delays of inaction during the reorganising transition. These plans can then be reverse engineered where possible into the emerging Strategic Combined Authorities framework strategies. So will the Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency consider these proposals? Thank you.
Councillor Lerney, please.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. You've raised a very important issue here. I agree that as the Strategic Combined Authorities have climate and nature responsibilities, this should come with a duty to take action and meet statutory targets, which is not currently the case. In my personal response to the devolution consultation, I have already actually said this. There will be a council response to the consultation, which will be published for residents to refer to if they wish. However, I don't feel it would be right for us to tell our residents what to say on this, particularly as it's actually a much wider consultation than just on this particular issue. I would, however, encourage them to read the consultation documents and give their own response. Cabinet do already work very closely as a team. We meet weekly as a group to discuss significant issues and work in 2s and 3s as appropriate on all cross-cutting issues. For example, the leader works with me on the Carbon Neutrality Action Plan, and I work with Councillor Westwood on the retrofit programme. Ideally, we would want to be setting direction on climate and nature to carry forward into the new unitary authorities. But even if neighbours also wish to do this, it will not be down to existing authorities entirely. Not only will the geography not necessarily follow existing boundaries, but there will be new councillors elected to the shadow unitary authorities who will make their own decisions about policy and priorities. We will look at what work is sensible to do. For example, it makes sense to complete our local area energy plan, which can feed easily into the Strategic Combined Authority LAEP plan, that's always a hard one to say, for Hampshire. It must be recognised that local government reorganisation will put considerable strains on the resources available for policy work within this and our neighbouring authorities. And as we are all aware, Hampshire County Council is cutting non-statutory work to the bone. I'm afraid we cannot afford to put resource into complex plans which could just sit on a shelf.
Do you have a supplementary, please?
Mr. Mayor, a very quick one. Given what you've just said, Councillor Lurney, I understand the difficulties, but can I ask for at least one thing? Is it possible for a carbon neutrality action plan open forum to be convened and to specifically address some of these tricky issues so that the wider public can have a bit better understanding of the issues that are missing from the mandate for the strategic combined authority? Thank you.
I think I'm happy to consider it. This has kind of been sprung on me, and it's not something that we've put any thought to at the moment. There are a number of other topics that we would like to discuss in a carbon neutrality open forum, such as the nature improvement plan, which is coming forward. So we're currently considering what topics we use. I think this might be quite difficult to have a discussion about, but I am happy to take this offline with you and discuss how that might work if we chose to move forward with that.
Thank you, Councillor Lurney. Question 5, Councillor Brooke, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Councillor Porter. Within the new enforcement plan currently out for consultation, the communication section clearly states it could be weeks or months between key stages and therefore updates. The enforcement team have a reputation for leaving cases long enough that they become not expedient to pursue and criticised for their inaction. Communication of the actions behind the scenes is critical for complainants and ensuring they are aware the case has not just been dropped or is being ignored. How does this plan, this new enforcement plan, intend to change perception and make enforcement more effective?
Councillor Porter, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I do have to say I do refute the statement you've made. It's not true the team leaves cases to become immune. But I do know that from your own experience as the responsible cabinet member, the challenges of handling enforcement cases. The previous administration handed over a significant backlog in enforcement cases, and it's important not to characterise the current enforcement team by the failures of the past. Currently, the enforcement team resolves a high proportion of current cases within 12 weeks, but we know we can do better, and we want to clear that backlog. And that's why earlier in this meeting, we put £200,000 into the budget for the enforcement team specifically to help tackle that backlog. It's also why we developed a new enforcement plan with the help of experienced parish councillors who took their time to give their views. This is explicitly designed to make the process clearer and improve communication. I'd like to take this opportunity actually to thank them for their valuable and considered input. They were very realistic and they really appreciated their opportunity to talk about it. And while I can't speak for your own period as portfolio holder, I can assure you that currently the team does also not leave cases to become immune. That doesn't mean cases don't sometimes become immune. Immunity rules are complex, and often a breach has already accrued immunity by the time it's been reported. But I can reiterate again that every single case is investigated.
Councillor Brooks, do you have a supplementary, please?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for your answer, Councillor Porter, but to imply I'm judging the enforcement team by the team of 5 years ago is quite insulting. The portfolio holder is very aware of the cases that we have been very much drifting within Denmead, the complete lack of inaction and the complete lack of communication on them, and was also aware that it took me several weeks to even receive a response after chasing 6 times. I didn't imply either that the enforcement team are actually leaving them to become not expedient to pursue. I said they had a reputation of doing so. My question was aimed to be constructive, as Councillor Porter is very aware, we've had this conversation many times, that the action is not seen by the residents, so it was meant to be constructive. So I will restate again, how will this plan ensure that communication is made with residents so they see just how much work does go on behind the scenes instead of trying to make a political statement?
I accept what you say, but I also think that actually by saying it in public, it tends to bring reality to what you were saying. And I think it's unfortunate that it was put in that way in the question. But I do think that the point about the enforcement team, the new plan, is that it notes that there are key stages in the enforcement plan. So that a remedy is underway. So once somebody has actually announced that they have got a breach, and the breach is actually recorded with the City Council, the remedy is underway, an enforcement notice is then being served, which they have a right of appeal. So there's a decision tree in the actual plan, and it shows very clearly what the decision tree, the purpose of the decision tree. So the enforcement notice has been served, then a planning application or appeal has been submitted to deal with that enforcement notice. But you know, and everybody else knows in this room, that appeals like that can take over a year to be dealt with by a government-appointed inspector. So it's not a quick process. And then appellants have a length of time to remedy that breach as set out by the inspector. So that can be another year waiting for that breach to be dealt with. So that's why it's very difficult to say that it's not a fast process. It isn't a fast process. It's a long and slow process. And enforcement cases are reported in a variety of ways. And this plan was carefully devised with the parish councillors. Really, they wanted a policy that they could explain easily to the public and show the processes that any enforcement action takes using that decision tree. So this enforcement plan asks residents to channel their concerns through the local parish council if possible, who can then determine the priority level for each breach, judging the impact on the community in conjunction with the City Council. So I do urge everybody to join in and respond to the enforcement plan's consultation. It can be found on the City Council's website, and the deadline for responses is the 20th of March. And certainly, I want to make sure that we get an enforcement plan that's as strong as it can be, bearing in mind the challenge of the law as it stands at the moment.
Thank you. Question 6, Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder please tell me how much council money will be spent this financial year to help improve the energy efficiency of the homes of Winchester residents of property owned by the council, by housing associations and privately?
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. The Council's own retrofit programme is a continuous improvement programme, and in-year spend varies according to contractor progression. But the climate change budget for next year is £5,936,000. Registered social landlords have their own programmes of improvement to meet national energy efficiency requirements, which they finance themselves or through government grants. A number of our staff are working to promote and help residents in private housing access government and other energy efficiency programmes. For example, as part of the Warmer Homes Partnership, the Council has helped low-income Winchester residents access £490,000 in Hug 2 funding since its launch in July 23 to date. We have signed a letter of intent to join the successor Warm Homes Local Grant Scheme, which will operate in the coming year, and we hope that that will be equally successful. The City Council website offers advice and links to schemes such as the Boiler Upgrade Scheme, which offers grants of £7,500 to residents installing air or ground source heat pumps. The work programmes for next year are being finalised, but we will continue to put resource into promoting schemes as they become available. Last year, this included not only Hug 2, but promoting the Hampshire Solar Together scheme, which saw 786 expressions of interest from Winchester residents. We will also be continuing to work with partners to offer both individual energy advice and community events promoting energy efficiency to residents.
Councillor Godfrey, do you have a supplementary, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Useful if the portfolio holder had answered a question which was given in advance, rather than tell us about all these schemes which are available, which are plentiful in certain ways. My concern is that we are finding ways to spend a lot of money to promote energy efficiency in the homes of our council tenants, but doing little or nothing to promote energy efficiency in the homes of those properties owned by housing associations and privately, which represent over 90% of all the properties in Winchester District. If we're going to tackle climate change, we have to deal across the board, not with just one section, one small section of a community. What will be done to help the 90% of residents in our district to promote and support more efficient homes in the coming year?
Yes, Councillor Godfrey, I think you've just listed the reasons why I mentioned all of the schemes that were available that we have been promoting, that have been taken up by residents, and that we will continue to promote. While this isn't, we don't have staff working specifically on this, the comms team, various members of our housing teams, and quite a few other staff are involved in making sure that these schemes are being promoted as they become available. I would be very interested to know his ideas for what we could do over and above that. As I said, work programmes are still being finalised, and I'd appreciate his ideas.
Right, thank you, Councillor Lerney. Question 7, Councillor Langford-Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the administration please give their views on the position of large parish councils on the reform within the local government reorganisation?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Langford-Smith. Parish and town councils are a vital part of how our district works and how local people's voices can be heard. And I know that the National Association of Local Councils, the umbrella body for all parish and town councils, is really frustrated that when the government set out how people could respond to local government reorganisation and devolution, they didn't explicitly make reference to parish and town councils in their guidance about engagement and consultation on reorganisation. And I share that frustration. I share the frustration that the government doesn't seem to understand the role properly. And I would like to reassure you that I will personally ensure that we continue to consult with and engage with parish and town councils in our district, as I did in my briefing on February the 5th, when Winchester's district's parish and town councils were amongst the first in the country to be briefed on the government's local government reorganisation request to districts, 50 minutes after the email was received. As I highlighted in that presentation, some parishes are interested in consolidating with neighbours to create scale in the context of new very large unitaries, and I remain interested in knowing whether parish and town councils are interested in pursuing this issue. We're also interested in knowing, particularly from larger parishes with the capacity to do it, whether there are district functions or assets they would like to take on or protect. And as you know, within discussions of local government reorganisation, there are some discussions about whether there may be boundary changes or not, and particularly for those parishes neighbouring other areas, I'm interested in understanding whether alignment with the neighbouring area might be relevant to them.
Councillor Langford-Smith, a supplementary.
Yes, Thank you. You may well be interested to know that parishes are meeting on Tuesday to discuss consolidation, etc. So can the administration promise residents that there will be an equal focus of city resources proportionally across the district for any parish reorganisations rather than just on the Lib Dem held city centre creation of a town council?
We have been, well, first of all, I think the fact that we are looking to ensure that we have complete coverage across our entire district of parish and town councils and looking to parish the city is a commitment to the parish sector and not one I would be at all apologetic about. And indeed, I'm advocating, I have been having conversations with neighbouring leaders to say that I think they should consider the same in terms of looking at the communities within their districts. In terms of resource, it will inevitably be a big project because we are talking about a significant proportion of the district and the population of the district. And so it will get a fair share of that resource, but be mindful that a significant proportion of the population of the district does live within the Winchester area, and that will be reflected. But absolutely, if there are other authorities that can achieve consensus with their neighbours in terms of any potential reorganisation, I am very keen to ensure that we support them in doing that. Not as a sort of spread the resource on a more general basis across the district. I think we'll spread it where there is interest and in change. We will focus on the areas that are ambitious for what they want to achieve and help them be ambitious. And I make no apology as well for saying that we will make sure that the public in Winchester are properly consulted about the provision of a town council in this area so that they continue to have the local representation which I believe parishes offer in other parts of the district and should be offered in Winchester as well.
Right, question 8, Councillor Warwick, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I believe my question is to Councillor Porter. Plans to develop a 20,000 dwelling new town around the Mitchell-Dever area were submitted by the developer to government last week. I just wanted to ask, will this proposal be considered by the City Council within the next iteration of their local plan? Thank you.
Councillor Porter, please.
Thank you. Winchester City Council has always rejected the principle of, actually at that point it was 6,000 homes at Mitchell-Dever. It's not where homes are needed in our district, as it sits in the countryside, and it's not linked to any of our rural market towns or the city of Winchester, and nor does it support the housing needs of Portsmouth or Southampton. For those reasons, we did not include it in our local plan to 2040. However, we will shortly begin work on the successor to the 2040 local plan. The local development scheme agreed at Cabinet on February the 12th lays out the local plan process, which starts this autumn. Now, returning to the Mitchell-Dever plan, any developer who submits their site through the process outlined to the new town's task force will have their site assessed by that task force. Areas like the South East will have the most proposals going in, although we don't know exactly who those 100 are. But the government has made it clear that it wants to build the towns in the areas where they're needed most. But going back to our plan, I would stress that though submission to the government as a new town bid does not count as a submission to our local plan, they are two completely separate things. And any such submission would have to be made separately. And so we await the outcome, I suspect, of the July decision.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Warwick, do you have a supplementary, please?
A really brief one, if I may, Mr. Mayor. And there were several announcements came out of government today around the NPPF, new announcements, including a requirement for all local authorities to conserve and enhance biodiversity. And you won't necessarily have an answer to this, but I just wondered how this challenge could be met over the chance of building 20,000 new homes over the green fields of Mitchell-Dever. Thank you.
I think it's very clear that biodiversity is really, really important. We've been discussing it a lot tonight. So that would be the fact of the matter. They would have to improve their biodiversity. the conversation is not even negotiable, is it, for us as an authority, I believe, at this point in time. We want zero carbon development and at least 10% biodiversity net gain. We would probably aim for higher if it was a brand new town. I think it's very clear that we have requirements as a district, and there is a national standard as well, so it's non-negotiable.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. We've now come to the end of questions from members, and we've concluded all the business for this evening. So can the officers please end the broadcast?